Hey, and welcome back to Lorehammer. I'm your host, Mark, and we got another Dark Angels episode for you here. But let's introduce who's going to be joining us. Christian, the darkest of angels. Welcome.
So, glad to be here.
What makes you so dark, my friend? Is it like your humor? Are you edgy?
Just the thoughts I have at night. That's all.
Oh, the
The
night
ones that I like to
terrors.
keep private.
Okay,
Yes.
fair enough.
The ones that'll get me arrested if I voice them.
We also got Apostrophe Jordan here joining the show. He's learned some not only Tau language, but also just 40K naming conventions. Toss an apostrophe in there and you're good to go. Welcome.
His naming conventions are always one episode behind. So in the next one, he'll have a Dark Angel name when we're talking about Blood Angel. Behold it.
Hey, no, I just do what I want. I'm not.
He's a trendsetter. Well, welcome to Lorehammer. As I mentioned, we're talking Dark Angels today, 40K edition this time. We've gone on quite the Dark Angel journey, but before we get to them, we'll just do some quick housekeeping. So GW is hiring a new creative lead, so me and Christian, we've decided, let's throw our names into the ring. Collectively, one resume. Yeah, two people for the price of one.
Perfect. I'll take half a salary. Easy.
Yeah, if that's what it takes to save GW from the hands of whoever they're going to hire, it will be worth the pay cut, I think, personally.
Oh, yes. I would give my life for this.
You know you guys are going to lose to some Gen Z girl who's never played Warhammer before, right?
Jordan, I am a Gen Z girl. I'll have you.
But she does have a degree in marketing.
And I would love to see you argue against me on that. GW is hiring a new creative lead, and that could mean big things for the franchise, or it could mean its demise. Hard to say. All I know is instead of you guys listening right now, applying, thinking that somehow you're going to get in, which you're not, apply for me and Christian. If they just get flooded with 1 million Mark and Christian from Lorehammer,
spammed resumes,
I think we could stand a chance.
Yes. And totally not get blacklisted forever. But yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. You know what? I'll do you one better. You know what? Jordan can work for free for us as well. So you get the three of us.
3 people for the price of one.
Hell of a deal. The only better deal on the internet than that is our Patreon.
Yeah. Only for $2.50 a month, you get ad-free, and $5 you can watch us on video. And yeah, just enjoying the Imperial Tithe and help support the show. The Imperium needs soldiers. The Imperium needs bodies. Throw your life on the line for the Emperor. And throw a couple bucks Lorehammer's way.
Might as well. What else are you doing on a Friday night?
Yeah. For $2.50, man, $2.50 gets you nothing. Just throw $2.50 towards us, and you get something. What are you gonna buy for $2.50 in this economy?
Exactly.
Even the dollar store, everything's $5 now.
Fuck.
Only Canadian dollar stores. But also, if you want to join us on the live stream, come on, guys. You know you do, because you can come for some whiskey and Warhammer. And if you're a patron, you can join on the live streams on Wednesdays and Fridays. You can join on both days, I believe. Is that right, Mark?
You can join anytime. Like, I'll go on there Thursday and we can chat. We'll just live stream about, I don't know, whatever you're into. Just give me money. I'm a core when it comes to that,
Yeah, absolutely. And we also do call-in guests at the end of the episode as well. If you're a patron, you can be a call-in guest, and that's always fun too.
Come chat with us.
Yeah, come chat with us. Tell us you think we deserve the job at GW. I dare you to argue otherwise. I dare you to line up all the different podcast hosts. I have to be in the front. Me and Christian, sorry. We're a package deal. We have to be in the front running.
One where the other goes, yeah.
Yeah.
You get one, you get both. It's like chlamydia.
Cool. Well, today we're doing the final part of the Dark Angels. Now, I'm not saying that we won't ever talk about Dark Angels again, but I will tell you it probably won't happen till the 300 episode mark. We're looking down the long barrel of a lot of different chapters here, but we finally made it to 40K timeline, and we're going to be talking about the Dark Angels, specifically the chapter in this era. Let's give you a little recap what you kind of missed. We learned all about the Lion, what he got up to, how he's kind of this parallel figure to the Emperor, how they have so many different kind of relating characteristics and goals and outcomes. Then we jumped into The Dark Angels in 40K, and how a lot of their mysterious nature kind of just bled into the Dark Angels and all their different ranks and roles. That half of them I can't remember, and the other half were, the Hexagrammaton, which I can remember all of them. And it was these cool, unique, different formations for doing different types of battle. The Horus Heresy happens. All ends and everyone's sad and they go home for a little bit of reprieve. And as Lionel Johnson and the chapter make it home, the homeworld opens fire on them. And in typical Dark Angel fashion, at this point in time, they've eliminated many homeworlds of chapters. So they're like, what's one more? And they blew up their own homeworld, sent it to the abyss, and Lionel Johnson fought an epic battle. He won but lost at the same time, as is tradition when massive hero characters fight each other. No one seems to ever win. It's a good time. And that kind of, takes us to 40K. There's a bunch of Dark Angels running around. The Imperium's kind of rebranding, reforging its kind of legacy, and dealing with just the outcomes of heresy that kind of been popping up everywhere. They're kind of going on this new scouring crusade. The first bit we're going to talk about is post-history. In this episode, we're going to talk a little bit about history, a lot about organization, different special units and stuff. We'll pick up from the history part of where we left off, though, kind of right after the Horus Heresy. The tale of the Dark Angels is one of somber grandeur, shrouded in myth and mystery, bound by oaths of silence and a relentless pursuit of redemption. Betrayed by their own kin on Caliban and the bereft of their Primarch, Wow, words already. We're getting into it. Welcome to Lorehammer. Hire me for the lead of GW. I can write, but I can't read. The sons of the First Legion vowed to erase the stain of treachery and bring the fallen to repentance, or obliterate them entirely. To preserve their honor in the eyes of the Emperor, the Dark Angels decreed that the truth of Caliban's destruction would be locked away in secrecy. None beyond their ranks could know of the schism that fractured their legion or the grim reality that some among their number had succumbed to chaos. They believed that revelation of such a betrayal would see them branded as excommunicate traitorous, denied any chance of salvation. Thus, the Inner Circle was formed, a clandestine conclave of the Legion's highest masters. Their purpose? To oversee the intricate web of vigilance, scrutinizing every brother, even themselves, for the faintest whispers of corruption. From this seed of paranoia grew a labyrinth of secrecy and mistrust that endures to this day, defining the Dark Angel's shadowed legacy. The catastrophe of Caliban's fall could not be entirely obscured. The warp storm that tore the world asunder resonated across the galaxy, a cosmic maelstrom sensed by the Psychers and shining with a supernova-like brilliance, where it collided with the impenetrable void shields of the Dark Angel's fortress monastery. Yet, the Sons of the Lion were an elaborate facade, binding each surviving brother with solemn oaths of silence so absolute that no outsider would unravel the truth of those fateful events. In the tumultuous aftermath of the Horus Heresy, their deception survived amidst the chaos. The Imperium reeled from its wounds, and its attention was drawn to new crises. Traitor legions lurked near the Eye of Terror, their ambushes claiming of grievous toll, while the Imperium itself bled under relentless Xenos incursions and planetary uprisings. The Dark Angels' plight, a warp storm devouring their homeworld and countless brothers, was one but tragedy among the overshadowed by a vast shadow of war. Yeah, it's kind of cool how they just kind of, they don't really tell anyone that happens. They just chalk it up as one of the lost worlds. Like, yeah, maybe the Xenos got to it, or like, yeah, we just got here and the planet was already fucked. Like,
we don't know.
We don't know.
We don't know what happened.
Look at those traitors over there. Could have been them.
I think it's also relevant to mention now too is that Inner Circle, it also incorporates like the other, because the legions were broken down into these sub chapters. All the descendants of the Dark Angels are collectively called the Unforgiven, and they have the same kind of ideas behind them of like hunting the fallen being a major priority for them as well. Just to throw that in there.
Yeah. Yeah, we do have a section at the end about successor chapters and kind of we separated, we followed the Codex Astartes, but ultimately knows is the word.
Just like the Imperial Fists. It's almost like none of them actually did it.
Hey. When inquiries into those losses emerged, the Dark Angels presented themselves as battered but unyielding warriors, too engaged in the Emperor's wars to linger in grief. Traitor strongholds yet still stood defiant, rebellious worlds awaited judgment, and Xenos threats surged across the stars. In the storm of conflicts, the Dark Angels divided their diminished fleet, answering desperate calls for aid, while a handful of remained to oversee the forging of the Rock, their new sanctuary among the stars. The galaxy bore witness to their valor. In the Cadian sector, they joined forces with the grieving Blood Angels, their brothers in sorrow after the loss of Sanguinius. Together, they struck like avenging angels, banishing traitors and demons to the void. On Seption Prime, the Dark Angels Terminators fought to the last, shielding the Ultramarines' retreat from Exterminatus as Exterminatus scoured the plague world of Nurgle's corruption. Those who stood alongside the Dark Angels hailed them as unyielding paragons of the Emperor's wrath, dedicated to the eradication of his foes. But upon their return to the Rock, the Dark Angels uncovered a haunting truth. They had believed that the traitorous fallen were obliterated, consumed by the warp that had annihilated them on Caliban. Yet the fury of the Dark Gods had spared them. The fallen were scattered across the galaxy, their psychic traces faint but undeniable. The librarians searched in vain for their lost Primarch, finding no trace of him, but the shadows whispered of the fallen's survival. Thus began the eternal hunt, an odyssey that cleansed the sins of the past and bring the fallen to justice. The Dark Angels march in silence, their deeds cloaked in myth, their motives hidden even from allies. To the Imperium, they are steadfast warriors. To themselves, they are the custodians of a terrible secret, bound to a path of redemption that grows darker with every passing age. So, I guess the question for you guys is, why do you think they took it so much more personally? Like, we know that during the Horus Heresy, not fully half of all the legions fell, like, within the Legion, but there were traitors within the Ultramarines. There were traitors probably within the Blood Angels and the Imperial Fists, and all of them maybe had a traitor or two. Why did the Dark Angels take it so personally?
That's something that I struggle to reconcile, actually, and I was like mulling over in my mind as you were reading, was exactly that question of, we know that other traitors existed in other legions, and even loyalists from traitor legions found some form of redemption within the Imperium, right? So, like, what could be worse than your own Primarch turning evil? I don't know. I honestly, that's one of the inconsistencies of 40K that I've never really been able to truly rectify in my mind, why the Dark Angels are so obsessive of this, unless it's like considered straight up a flaw, like they are overly obsessive over something that probably no one else cares about. I don't know.
They are like particularly obsessive. Like, they are the masters of not just one style of warfare, but all styles of warfare. They pour themselves into everything completely and fully and master it. So maybe there is that obsessive nature to it.
Yeah, exactly. Where it's unique to them, even though, like, no one else thinks it's such a big deal, but fine, if you guys want to go off on it, then go ahead, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, they are so obsessive that they'll like drop, what they're doing to chase after a fallen, right? Like, that's how concerned they are about it.
Like they're the first legion, right?
Yeah.
So isn't that like at least symbolic of something? Like they're the emperor's first, and so they feel like the most loyal. They feel like, I don't know, they should be the most obsessive.
Honor demands it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Fuzz in the chat just said that, where I wonder if it's because they were the first, they were the true emperor, or they were true to the emperor since the Unification Wars and feel that they should have been better than this. For sure. Um, I also think sometimes, like, I wonder if it had to do with they were the only legion that their Primarch fell to their own hands. All the other ones, fell to traitor Primarchs or fell to the Emperor, whatever happened to him. So maybe that's like an additional blight where it's like, man, not only did they betray the Imperium, like they betrayed our Primarch, like everything. I don't know. They killed him.
Yeah, it's never really clear though, like why they're so obsessive. It's just that they are obsessive about this, and they keep it under wraps. Like they're very secretive about it. You know, like you don't even really learn about their full history unless you work your way up the ranks of the inner circle.
Yeah. Asma Deming says the Dark Angels seem to be the most prideful of legions. Oh, just you wait for the third legion, my friend.
Have you heard of the Emperor's
Have you
Children?
heard? Yeah. The other kind of thought I could kind of come up with was just, I mentioned on another episode where they go the whole heresy without losing any members to heresy, and they're the noble sons. They do what they need to do, and even when they start Imperium Secundus, they're like hesitant about it, like, oh man, like the emperor, he might be dead, but should we be doing this? Like, we don't want to be declared excommunicatus traitors anyways, or like, and then so they make it to the Horus heresy, or to the end, to the siege of Terra, and the emperor dies, and it's just like, ah man, now this is dead. And then they go home, and then they get hit by the traitors, and it's just like they get so fed up with it. It's like, really, the whole thing's over
After all this,
after all of this, you guys still want to fight us? Like, why? What the hell? So maybe there's a little bit of that too, where it's like you picked sides at the very end. You pick sides after.
after the fighting is done, just to ruin what's left. Yeah, that could be, that definitely could be it. But the issue is that, like, that's us projecting, right? Like, that's our thoughts on it. It's never really, expounded on in the lore itself. So that's all we're left to do is speculate.
Well, until we become the GW creative lead.
Oh yeah, of course. Then we'll make it canon. Everything we've ever decreed will become canon.
This is true,
including your wildest future dreams.
You can just come to the Lorehammer podcast and you'll know what is canon.
Exactly. And remember, don't apply for yourself. Apply for the three of us to get that job. It's a much better use of your time.
Even if you are more qualified, you're not really.
No one
Screw your writing degree. Beginning the hunt. The masters of the First Legion met the revelation of the fallen survival with a stoic resolve that belied the storm raging within their hearts. On the one hand, they grappled with the gnawing fear that their nightmare might come to pass. The dark truth of their legion's treachery, its betrayal of the Emperor, could yet seep into the galaxy's consciousness, threatening their very existence. Yet within this revelation lay a glimmer of hope, a pathway to redemption forged in fire and blood. The continued existence of the fallen was both a curse and a gift, for these renegades could be hunted, captured, or slain. Their repentance might cleanse the First Legion of its eternal shame. The Grandmasters of the nascent Inner Circle, the hidden council of the Dark Angels, elite, swore a solemn and binding oath, so long that as even one of the fallen drew breath, unrepentant and unjudged, the Dark Angels would remain unforgiven, cursed to bear the weight of their sins across eternity. I just want to comment there real quick. That does, not all fallen are strictly heretics. Some are just like rogue elements, like they become pirates or warlords in their own right. So that's something to consider too. But in the eyes of the Dark Angels, they might as well just all be heretics. Like they don't care. They're not gonna let you go just because you don't worship the Dark Gods.
Yeah. Like the reason the Dark Angels fell was very different than all the other ones. Like yes, it was chaos taint to it for sure, but like they weren't screaming blood for the blood god when they're orbital bombarding or shooting missiles up at the fleet. It was a very different. It was like you guys left us. Like they were the ones who felt betrayed. They were the ones who felt justified.
Yeah, so the nature of their betrayal is quite different than, say, the Iron Warriors. The other thing to note too is when the Dark Angels hunt a fallen, their goal is to extract confessions and to have them repent. And, that's easier if, done through torture or whatever means necessary to make them repent, right? Like they don't care if it was, they're not going to talk to you nicely and be like, you made us all feel really bad about this. You should probably say sorry. It's like, you will repent and then you will pay for it. We're going to set you on fire, right? Like, but so that's an added element.
I didn't have room and time to add in, but they have a whole psychic discipline that the librarians use to also extract these confessions from them. Like they have one psychic power called Mind Worm, where They worm their way into your mind to really see all the secrets that you're holding. Now, so yeah, they developed like this whole psychic discipline based on like interrogation, which is pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and even their chaplains are called interrogator chaplains, right? There's a very strong, like, real life Catholic inquisitorial theme to, how they capture someone and then make them confess to whatever sins.
Ask Deming in the chat. He asked, "There's only a couple factions within the Imperium that were traitor heretic free, right?" I don't know what you guys know of that.
Yeah, like institutions like the Custodes, the Sisters of Silence.
Yeah, but even Grey Knights weren't around during the Horus Heresy.
No, but I don't know if he's specifying strictly Horus Heresy.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, very few though. Like I would say most of Space Marine chapters definitely had one or two Astartes that fell. They would oftentimes intermingle. They would have some Astartes go hang out with this Astartes faction and kind of like learn from them and ship chapters around Astartes around between the legions. So I would imagine some of those guys would have fallen. Get too far in with the warrior cults, the warrior lodges, and just kind of.
Yeah.
Now on this topic, I have a question. Like, if they were a heretic, does that also mean they had fallen to chaos, or are those two separate things? Or are they kind of one and the same?
Yeah, like when talking 40K, I would say a heretic is anyone who like blasphemes the emperor.
Right. Yeah.
Where that same thing didn't quite exist in 30K. Like the whole religion wasn't around, the whole ecclesiarchy wasn't there. So like to blaspheme the emperor is one thing. That doesn't necessarily mean you're bound to a warped
Yeah.
god.
Okay.
You worship another god. Yeah.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. Like you could just reject the emperor.
So just because you're a heretic does not necessarily mean you've been given over to chaos or something like that. You could just be like an atheist.
Yeah, exactly. That's the best way to describe it is like, okay, let's say you're part of a religious cult. You could either be anti that religious cult. That's kind of what chaos is to the imperial cult. Or you could be indifferent or, hostile as like an atheist type faction, an unbelieving faction, right?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
They also have heretics, as in like technology, and those are people who turn their back on the teachings and strictures of the cult Mechanicus. So they're way more willing to experiment, create new things, and all that kind of stuff. Maybe not worship the machine spirit in the way that they should be. So yeah, just going off that, it doesn't necessarily imply that they fell to chaos at all. It just means that they kind of go against the religious norms.
Yeah. And there is a difference too, just in real life with like apostasy versus heresy. Like they do have real definitions and they do mean things. I know it's a big meme to throw around like, oh, heresy, whenever you hear something that you don't like, but that's not strictly what heresy means.
So like, just talking more words, like I would be an apostate. Hey, like I grew up in a religious church and then I abandoned it. It's essentially that where
if you reject the faith, you're an apostate.
Okay.
Yeah, that's apostasy. Whereas heresy, you're teaching like a false, non-orthodox teaching. Yeah. So like you started your own cult and now you're like, worship this god instead.
Oh, shit. No, okay, so then I am that too, because I did try to start a cult at one point. Fuck.
You're everything, Mark. You are every label. The Inquisition's coming for you. It's just a matter of time. Till they find you in Panama. They're looking door to door. Okay, let's get back into it. Thus began a secret crusade, one that would define the destiny of the Dark Angels and their successor chapters for millennia. This shadowed mission to seek out and obliterate the fallen became the driving force behind their every action. To this day, the Unforgiven wage their clandestine war of atonement, striving to erase the blemish that stains the honor of the First Legion. So again, just a reference, the Unforgiven is all the Dark Angels and Dark Angel descendants as a collective. This hunt is an unrelenting duty, surpassing all others in its importance. No price is too great, no sacrifice too vast in pursuit of the sacred charge. Even the fires of battle pale in comparison to the burning need to redeem their honor. The Dark Angels have been known to abandon their allies mid-battle, even in the face of the Emperor's enemies, should they catch wind of a fallen angel's presence. Their path is one of relentless vigilance and shadowed purpose, a tale whispered in half-truths and shrouded in secrecy. Until every last fallen is brought to justice, the Dark Angels can never find peace, their souls bound to an eternal oath of redemption and retribution.
And for 10,000 years they looked. Under every rock and in every crevasse, they searched.
They're just searching the rock for 10,000 years. You idiots never thought to look at the rest of the galaxy, did you?
They have to have gone somewhere.
All right, shall we get into the second founding? In the shadowed aftermath of the Horus Heresy, the Dark Angels began to shift, their demeanor growing shrouded in secrecy, and their actions tinged with an insular reserve. Watchful eyes across the Imperium took note of this transformation, though none could truly pierce the veil of their purpose. Drawing from the ancient structure of the Order of Caliban, the surviving members of the First Legion reforged their brotherhood, embracing an even deeper monastic discipline, their actions echoing with the weight of knightly oaths and somber vows. The fall of Caliban had scarred them deeply, and the Dark Angels sought to establish new rigors to guide their future. In the early 31st millennium, as the Imperium forged into institutions like the Inquisition to root out heresy and chaos corruption, the Dark Angels stood among the faithful, their honor judged intact despite the cataclysm that had claimed their homeworld and the disappearance of their Primarch, Lion L. Johnson. Their tireless heroics during the Great Scouring shielded them from greater scrutiny, their valor a testament to their loyalty. Yet even this could not dispel the unease their reclusive behavior inspired. To the Imperium, the loss of a Primarch and the destruction of their homeworld explained their brooding withdrawal. Once merely reserved, the Dark Angels had become taciturn, their silence heavy with unspoken truths. Where once they had been described as contemplative, now they seemed cloaked in a foreboding stillness. Yet their campaigns remained as precise and unyielding as ever, their battlefield prowess undiminished. Whatever sorrow or secret they harbored, it did not impede their war against the enemies of mankind.
I really like how, they were always a pretty aloof legion, but they were still very well respected, and like well known. They weren't like aloof like the Alpha Legion or maybe the Raven Guard, where it's like, you don't even necessarily even see them on the battlefield.
Oh, they're there. You just don't see them.
Yeah, exactly. But after this, they really start to withdraw and kind of, separate themselves one more step further.
As the Imperium adapted to the horrors revealed by Horus's betrayal, the High Lords and Loyalist Primarchs sought to prevent such treachery from ever recurring. The second founding was born of this dread, fragmenting the vast Space Marine legions into smaller, independent chapters, each limited to 1,000 warriors. This restructuring, codified in the legendary Codex Astartes, was the work of Rabut Guilliman, the Primarch of the Ultramarines. Guilliman's vision sought not only to safeguard the Imperium from the corruption of chaos, but also to empower its defenders with greater flexibility, dispersing the remaining loyalists, Space Marines, to confront threats across the stars. This is kind of interesting to me because, typically, when you want to control things and bring order to the chaos, pun intended, you centralize things. You don't decentralize it. But in this case, they're decentralizing it. They're splitting it up into more factions and giving them each of the factions a little bit more power and decision-making ability. So just kind of interesting.
Yeah, and they even took this as far as to the Imperial Army, where they broke the Imperial Army into the Imperial Navy and the Imperial Guard. So yeah, they, like you said, kind of decentralized everything, so no one could ever have that much power again.
Right, yeah.
They still love a good war, yeah.
And even within the Imperial Guard, they break it down further into the regiments with their focuses, right? So you show up with just a bunch of tanks, but no air support or infantry support. So it purposefully makes them have to be reliant on each other, but also if anyone goes rogue,
right,
they don't have another Horus Heresy on their hands.
Yep. No War Masters no more.
Oh no, they still have War Masters, ironically enough.
Oh, did they? Okay.
Someone still has to organize all these desperate factions now.
Is it like a single War Master they have at a time? Or do they?
They've had singular War Masters, but I don't know if two can exist theoretically concurrently.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, the Dark Angels, however, remained a law unto themselves while they adopted a new chapter system. Their inner workings bore the indelible marks of their history. Their higher ranks and the elite structure of their first and second companies, the last vestiges of Hexagrammaton's sacred wings, defied the exact tenets of the Codex Astartes. This deviation was not merely tradition, but a reflection of their unspoken mission, a duty born of their legion's darkest hours. Amid the rising tide of chaos and the dread of betrayal, the Dark Angels stood apart, their shadowy legacy woven into the fabric of their very action. To the galaxy, they were both saviors and enigmas, their deeds spoken of in whispers, their secrets guarded as zealously as their lives. In their silence, they carried the weight of their past, an unbroken thread tying them to the truth the Imperium could never fully comprehend.
Yeah, so they have the whole hexagrammaton, and they break that up, but they keep two of them. They keep the the Deathwing and the Ravenwing, uh, for the sole purpose of hunting Fallen. And we will talk a little bit more about them later on. But yeah, it's interesting that they did away with the other ones because they're like, we don't need artillery people to hunt the Fallen. Like, we need people that can hit hard, and we need people that are so durable that if they are coming against a traitor Marine, they can deal with them. The other kind of thing Fuzz asks was, do chapters still answer to the original Legion chapter as like a higher authority?
In this case, like in the case of the Unforgiven, yes. In the case of the Imperial Fist, slight kind of, and then the rest not really.
Uh, yeah, kinda. You know, like the Blood Angels, when Bale was under attack, they called upon a whole bunch of their founding chapters, and even rebuilt the Blood Angels with a bunch of uh, founding chapters and stuff. It all depends. Like, yeah, there is no actual strict line of hierarchy from one chapter to the next. Like, it's not like the second chapter or the second founding chapter uh answers to the first, and then the third answers to the second, and so on and so forth down the founding all the way to 23. But you know, it's that honor and that homage. Like, if you know that your gene seed comes from your specific chapter and they get into trouble, you're probably going to go help them out, whether there's formal ties there that allow you to or not. You're probably still going to, you're honor bound to still do that.
Yeah, but in the case of the Dark Angels, there's that unique structure of the inner circle that kind of secretly governs the objectives of other Unforgiven chapters. So there's a little more control. It's not like centralized control where they answer to Azrael explicitly, but there's kind of that back end control of like a secret cabal that like influences all the other.
Yeah, there still is definitely communications, and I do have a whole section on the successors at the end of this episode where we learn a little bit more of the unique nature of the Dark Angels. So now at that point, we got 40k Dark Angels in chapter form. They've been broken down into 1,000 members, and they've been divided out. I forget which chapter. Maybe the chapter or the chat will know, but one of the hexagrammaton wings actually kind of was reformed into a specific chapter, and I thought that was kind of cool that its legacy lived on in another chapter. But we have now 10,000 years of history that I'm just going to gloss over, because honestly, we could come back to it another time. And there's a bunch of battles in here like that would be cool to talk about at some point, but I don't think we need to know about all the different battles in history to understand the Dark Angels now. Like, we got a good grasp of them. I even got to, like, when writing the Air Indomitus stuff, I'm like, well, fuck, we definitely should come back to them. But maybe when we're done our Primarch series, we catch back up with all the legions in 2 episodes to see what kind of happened. Did the Primarchs come back, or what the deal is with that? So I also left out the Era Indomitus and all that kind of stuff. I just once again figured, like, history is cool and stuff, but one battle doesn't really change too much from one to the next. at this point they've been broken down into their chapter. They don't really change. They don't really add anything new. Like it's not like 5,000 years in they add now a medium circle of members that do medium level responsibilities. Like the chapter is made and pretty well established now and pretty much stays that way for the next 10,000 years. So yeah, we'll just skip that. We'll jump to chapter organization. And the first biggest thing, as we've mentioned a couple times already on this episode and definitely on the last one, was the inner circle. The inner circle. In the shadowed aftermath of Caliban's annihilation, the senior brethren of the First Legion convened in a clandestine council. Veiled by secrecy and bound by unbreakable oaths, in this hidden conclave they decreed that the grievous fall of their kin would remain forever buried, an eternal silence cloaking the betrayal of those who succumbed to the ruinous powers. To the galaxy, no whisper of the schism would escape, lest the Dark Angels be condemned alongside Horus's treacherous legions, their honor invocably lost in the Emperor's eyes. As centuries unraveled from the cataclysmic fall, the inner circle emerged. At first, a desperate assembly, then an enigmatic hierarchy, its roots entwined not only the Dark Angels, but also their successor chapters. This shadowy order evolved, guarding truth too damning for the uninitiated. While new worlds were claimed and fresh recruits bolstered the chapter's ranks, the sins of the past were whispered only among the eldest veterans. Neophytes learned not of the fallen, nor of the shame that burdened their forebears. Their training forged them in the crucible of discipline, loyalty, and martial brotherhood. The inner circle's guardianship of these secrets became a sacred mandate, a legacy of secrecy passed from one generation to the next, comprised of the Supreme Grandmaster, the Grandmasters, and the Deathwing and Ravenwing's elite. This order concealed truth even from its own ranks. Among its members, revelations were bestowed in cryptic layers, and only the Supreme Grandmaster glimpsed of the full tapestry of the Dark Legacy. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Like, just imagine being one of these first neophytes. You're like, holy fuck, I got inducted into the First Legion, the Dark Angels, the best of the best. And then slowly, over the years, you become a veteran. You're like, oh shit, everything I was taught was a lie. Half of you guys fell. And then you get inducted a little bit more. You're like, wait, what? Luther, the guy that we know is like a great legend. He actually betrayed and killed our Primarch. And it just goes deeper and deeper. And you're just like, oh man, I don't know what effect that would have if it would break a bunch of people, or if they're at this point so in it that like none of these secrets are even revealed to you unless they know that you can handle them and wouldn't snap from them in the first place.
Yeah, a lot of cults actually operate like that, where they kind of like dangle the carrot of hidden or forbidden knowledge in front of their aspirants. So like it actually draws people deeper into the cult as they get more and more revealed to them. So I imagine it functions to that degree.
I'll take that into the next time I try to start a cult. More secrets.
Yeah, that's why it broke, man.
Yeah, I was too open. I'm like, I'm just doing this for tax purposes, and I guess no, I got to be more sneaky. Bound by oaths of silence, the Grandmasters vowed unyielding penance. So long as one fallen remained unrepentant, the Dark Angels would bear the eternal curse of the unforgiven. Redemption would come only through the capture and repentance of every wayward brother, a mission that became the chapter's secretive and consuming purpose. Yeah, like, you know, we've said they call themselves the Unforgiven, but like the run-of-the-mill neophyte does not call them that, I would imagine. Like, that's level one. That like level one of learning the secrets. It's like, well, we're actually unforgiven. You're like, why are we unforgiven? You gotta advance
What
a little
did we
bit
do?
more. Yeah, you know.
Yeah.
But like, to just get in the chapter, what do you think? Do they do like the basic recruits, or maybe like just a 10-year-old space marine? Do they call each other the Unforgiven?
I don't know. Like, obviously, it would open the door to questions. And I don't know how much they do or don't reveal to neophytes. And I can't imagine what deeper secrets they could reveal. I know you kind of like made a chain of like causality there of like the first layer would be like, oh, that half of us fell. That part they obviously keep a secret because they don't even like any other loyalist factions knowing that. But yeah, like to walk around calling yourself Unforgiven and then people ask you why and you just like hide under your hood trying to act mysterious and not answer them.
Yeah.
It's like, okay. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
Maybe the Unforgiven, like for the first, like the new recruits or whatever, it's just like, well, we failed the Emperor during the Horus Heresy. Like, we let him die. We didn't do all we could have, and until we kind of cleanse the galaxy of heretics, we won't be forgiven. Maybe they just kind of layer and build it up like that slowly.
Yeah, exactly. I'd imagine that's the case, but again, like it's never really explicit, right? They never say how much is or isn't revealed to the common recruit and what the next kind of level of
Yeah.
secret knowledge. They just say there is secret knowledge that they reveal about the chapter's dark history, but like, okay, what does that actually mean? What do they actually tell you?
Yeah. Do I sense another Lorehammer book in the making? The Secrets of the Fallen, maybe.
Yeah. It's just blank. It's just blank pages.
Yeah. Bound by oaths and silence, the Grand Masters vowed unyielding penance. So long as one fallen remained unrepentant, the Dark Angels would bear the eternal curse. I think I read that one. We'll jump down one. The chapter's lore, shrouded in myth and allegory, weaves its truth in veiled parables, passing from master to aspirant like fragments of an ancient saga. These tales, like the fabled tale of the two heads talking, recounted the liberation of enslaved peoples at great cost, echoing themes of betrayal, penance, and sacrifice. Yet only those elevated to the vaunted Deathwing begin to see through the fog of legend, catching glimpses of the truth behind the chapter's riddles. Entrance into the Deathwing marks the first step on a perilous and path of revelation. Aspirants, scrutinized by their masters and the enigmatic watchers in the dark, are summoned to solemn rituals of judgment. Those deemed worthy ascend, stepping into the labyrinth trust of the inner circle. Those who falter vanish into the abyss, casualties of the chapter's unrelenting shame. Yet the path does not end there. With each rise in rank, more layers of truth are revealed, the burdens of knowledge growing heavier. Grandmasters are entrusted with nearly all the chapter's secrets, their awareness woven into the grand design. But even they stand outside the innermost sanctum where only the supreme Grandmaster treads, a solitary guardian of the chapter's deepest mysteries. Failsafes, born of the Lion's strategic genius, ensured that no revelation is ever truly lost. Should the disaster claim the lives of key figures, knowledge is preserved and passed to its successors. Yet there are whispers of truth so profound that even the Supreme Grandmaster does not possess them. Secrets that may never see the light of day, locked in the unfathomable depths of the Lion's legacy. Yeah, like these are the Lion's most embarrassing moments. Like he's going to give a good speech and then he stumbles over a word. These we never speak about, these shames. Stuff that keeps the lion up for 10,000 years. Yeah.
At night. Yeah.
The Dark Angel's journey is one of shadowed silence. Their honor entwined with the unending quest for redemption. They march through the millennia burdened by guilt, their purpose cloaked in mystery, their hearts steeled by the eternal vow to hunt the fallen and cleanse the stain of betrayal, no matter the cost. Thus, the Sons of the Lion continue their watch, bound by duty, enshrouded in secrecy, and driven by the haunting echo of their past.
Yeah. So I do think some of these, like, the secretive nature of the Dark Angels and stuff made a lot more sense too in a little bit of older lore that it didn't quite translate over once they solidified the Horus Heresy. And we did kind of talk about this during the Horus Heresy episode about the Dark Angels. It used to be that the Dark Angels, we truly didn't know what their secrets were. So these constant vague allusions to like secrets and mysteries of the Dark Angels were always kind of left like that to imply, are the Dark Angels loyal or not loyal? Was the Lion loyal or not loyal? This was done on purpose to create that sense of mystery. But now that the lore has kind of been settled, especially in the era of the Horse Heresy, we know what happened. We know what the truth was. It kind of retroactively hurts that secretive image of the Dark Angels because we know what the facts of the case are. So how many more secrets could there possibly be? Right. Whereas it was left to your imagination as to like, oh, what kind of dirty laundry do they really have? What secrets are they actually keeping? What do the fallen know that we don't know? Right.
Yeah. We used to think potentially that Luther was the loyalist and Lion was the traitor, just playing his cards close to the chest. Like waiting to see who came out on the Horus Heresy before he picked a side. But
Right.
ultimately we learned that's not the case. He joined a whole empire with Rebut Gilliman and Sanguinius, and the only reason he wasn't at the Siege of Terra was because of the Rune Storm. And we, like you said, we learned all these details, kind of taking away some of that myth and mystery.
Yeah, same thing with all the Primarchs, right? Like it hurt all the Primarchs to some degree, but specifically the Dark Angels. In 40K, this constant talk of mystery, well, now we know, and there's not a lot of mystery left, right? So it kind of rings hollow now that you read it and see it. So
Dark Angels, like compared to other legions, I guess, are they like particularly zealous about rooting out heresy, more so than other legions, just because of their own history? Is that sort of the idea, or am I wrong in that interpretation?
It's hard to say for sure, but I would definitely lean towards, like during the Horus Heresy, when the Rune Storm was finally broken and the Lion was able to make his way to Terra, he made a couple pit stops along the way at Trader Primarch Homeworld and fucking exploded them. He did that to like 2 or 3 Trader Primarch Homeworlds, where you don't get a Homeworld anymore. There was a vengeance side to it.
Yeah.
And yeah, that does carry on a little bit.
Are there any other legions though that are like that are as zealous about rooting out the betrayal?
I feel like no. Maybe the only guys that I could maybe think of, but it's not quite the same, would be like the Black Templar, where they're super zealous, but it's not necessarily that they're specifically rooting out chaos.
yeah, they're just like zealous for the
Like
Imperium.
it's more that they're just really fanatical for the Emperor.
For them, it's not about what they're against; it's about what they're for.
Yeah. Maybe the final thought before we move on to specialty ranks and
Let's
formations is we talked for a second, if the Grandmaster dies and he's the only one who knows the secret, who passes that chain of knowledge down? Like, there are the Watchers in the Dark who walk around the rock and they can go into any chamber they want. They know all the secrets, it seems. So like, if something really tragic happened and all your secret keepers are dead, there would still be the Watchers who would know what's going on. They're the true keepers of the secrets for sure.
Yeah. I imagine they also probably write down some things and keep them in like locked and sacred texts that like, open this in case of death kind of situations too.
Sure.
There's ways. I'm just saying there's ways to pass down knowledge. You don't all have to die. Okay, let's get into the specialty ranks and formations then of the new iteration of the Dark Angels. So first and foremost, you have the Supreme Grand Master. The Supreme Grand Master stands as the ultimate authority over the Dark Angels chapter, embodying the full weight of their millennia-old legacy. A paragon of strategy and secrecy, he alone holds the entirety of the chapter's darkest truths, including the full scope of the betrayal at Caliban and the ongoing hunt for the fallen. Wielding absolute command over the chapter's military, political, and spiritual affairs, the Supreme Grand Master is both a warlord and a keeper of forbidden knowledge. Each Supreme Grand Master carries the burden of ensuring the chapter's honor and survival, balancing their eternal quest for redemption with their duty to the Imperium. And the current Supreme Grand Master is Azrael.
Yeah, and he even transferred the Primaris Rubicon and everything, so good for him. Another guy who transferred,
just like everyone else.
yeah, who this very fatal procedure just made his way through. No big deal, ain't no thing.
Yeah, and once again, like he holds all the secrets and presumably of all the Unforgiven too, right? Like he knows the whole scope of everything. Right. Next up, we have the Grandmaster of the Deathwing. The Grandmaster of the Deathwing leads the first company of the Dark Angels, composed of the chapter's most veteran warriors, each clad in ancient Terminator armor. He is the executor of the chapter's most perilous missions and guardian of the innermost secrets. As the spearhead of the hunt for the fallen, he commands the elite Deathwing Knights and wields authority within the inner circle second only to the Supreme Grand Master. A master of relentless warfare, his every action reflects the unyielding resolve of the Unforgiven, his life devoted to the capture and repentance of the chapter's most hated traitors.
I guess maybe we'll mention too that this would be the equivalent of a first captain, and then the Supreme Grand Master would be a chapter master. But yeah, this guy is like the veteran company guy, and his company consists of entirely Terminators, which we'll talk about a little bit more in the future here.
And currently it's Belial, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I wonder if he carried on. I think he did as well. I think he passed the Rubicon as well. But
They just released a model. Yeah. They all pass the Rubicon, man.
yeah, but he might be a little harder to tell because he's in Terminator armor. So
That's true.
like we don't
No.
quite know if he did or not.
Yeah.
I would have to actually look up and read about his character.
My assumption is, unless it's explicitly stated that they, for whatever reason, don't want to become Primaris, that they probably are Primaris now. That's going to be my default
Yeah.
assumption. And I've yet to encounter one that willfully has not undergone the transition.
Gabriel Seth of the Flesh Terrors.
But they haven't released his model yet, so. Nor will they, I assume, if he doesn't make it.
Yeah, fair enough. But they did, like, he was a big character in Devastation of Baal, and like he talks about how much he hates the Primaris and thinks it's not good and how he would never do it. So hard to say, man. Like, GW with the new creative designer, man, he might come out as a female.
You mean we might? Oh no, sorry, we're not going to do that. I was going to say we might bring Gabriel Seth back.
You know what, Christian? Do what you have to do to get the job.
Do what needs to be done. All right. Grandmaster of the Ravenwing. The Grandmaster of the Ravenwing leads the second company, an elite force of lightning-fast bike-mounted warriors and aerial specialists. Tasked with pursuit and reconnaissance, the Ravenwing excels in tracking and engaging the fallen, often striking with surgical precision before vanishing into the void. The Grandmaster of the Ravenwing is a cunning tactician, adept at outmaneuvering foes and unearthing hidden enemies. As a key member of the Inner Circle, he wields profound knowledge of the Inner Circle. He wields profound knowledge of the chapter's grim history, ensuring the Ravenwing remains as an indispensable tool for their shadowed crusade. So this is like their fast attack unit and third down the totem pole. Master of the Rock. The Master of the Rock oversees the Dark Angel's mobile fortress monastery, a celestial bastion brimming with secrets and relics of Caliban. More than a mere custodian, he commands the chapter's vast resources and maintains the sanctity of its rituals. Entrusted with the defense of the sacred edifice, he ensures that its concealed vaults, ancient weaponry, and the enigmatic watchers in the dark remain secure. The Master of the Rock also coordinates the chapter's operations, serving as the logistical backbone of the Dark Angel's eternal campaign against the Fallen.
Yeah, and the Rock is, that leftover bits of Caliban. I think we talk a little bit more about that too.
Piece of Caliban.
It's asteroid sized and yeah, pretty cool spot. I
Yeah, I don't know if you mentioned this later too in War Gear, but the Dark Angels have a disproportionate amount of like ancient and relic.
we
War
definitely
Gear,
talked a
too.
lot about that in the last episode of the 30K Legion era. We talked about all the types of extra weapons and not only just like extra war gear that you'd find on a person. They had a bunch of like planet ending exterminatus type weapons that no one else had access to.
Yeah, but that carries on into 40K, right? Like they have disproportionately more plasma and more Terminator armor and more of the lost tech that other chapters also kind of might be lacking.
All right. Should we get into the probably the funnest job of them all? The High Interrogator.
Jordan's a bit of a psychopath.
The High Interrogator is a figure of dark resolve, tasked with extracting repentance from the fallen through relentless and often harrowing methods. An unswerving believer in the chapter's mission, he oversees the interrogator chaplains and ensures that each captured traitor confronts the weight of their betrayal. Possessing both spiritual authority and an unyielding will, the High Interrogator embodies the chapter's fierce determination to cleanse its legacy, his role a grim necessity in the pursuit of redemption. Interrogator Chaplain. Interrogator chaplains are the spiritual and moral backbone of the Dark Angels, combining the fiery zeal of a chaplain with the grim duty of interrogating the fallen. Clad in black armor and wielding the Crozius Arcanum, they inspire their brethren in battle, while also bearing the dark responsibility of uncovering the truth behind betrayal. Each interrogator chaplain serves as a living embodiment of the chapter's eternal penance, walking the fine line between redemption and wrath, their words igniting devotion in their brothers and despair in their foes.
Yeah, these guys are super cool. I love inspiring my brethren through a weapon that I use. Just that the thought of them knowing I could use it on them at any moment, I find really gets the job done.
Do these guys have like any miniatures, like with some really long needles that are about to inject some
Uh,
awful concoction into your blood?
um, no, no, they do have minis for sure, but not. They don't look like surgeon esque or whatever. You know,
Oh,
if you
okay.
you look at like the Fabius Bile miniature or some apothecaries, you know, you could get that vibe. But these guys, they have they do it more through. Yeah, like, they do it more through psychic means, you know, there's brute force that you can use, you know, you break somebody's arm, but,
They're
like,
not like pulling people's teeth out.
you know, they might be, but you're dealing with Astartes, so torture isn't necessarily gonna be the best way to break an Astartes. I
That's
know
true.
even when we did the Adeptus Astartes episode, people in the chat were talking about how torture isn't actually a good form of extracting information, because people either wanna get the torture over, so they'll say whatever they need to hear. You know, often it's more the threat of torture that gets the job done
Yeah.
better. Um,
There's a lot of false confessions and stuff, yeah,
yeah.
in torture.
Yeah, Jordan knows from his torture as a tyrant.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, they definitely like work hand in hand with the librarians of the chapter and use psychic powers to kind of like weave the way in and get their info.
No,
Yeah.
I will argue that they probably do use physical punishment and coercion to maybe not necessarily strictly to extract information so much as to punish too, right? Like in their eyes, you're filthy for what you did. I am going to take all your teeth anyways, regardless of what you tell
Sure.
me. And I'll take your eyes and nose and ears and everything else, right? Like it's
Sure.
vindictive. It's a vindictive interrogation. So before you get any
Yeah.
ideas of them being too good.
The cool thing about these chaplains too is they have
Mm.
like a rosary pearl kind of necklace. And every time they get a new confession, they add to their pearl collection.
All right, so the Deathwing Knights. Deathwing Knights are the epitome of the Dark Angel's martial might, clad in Baroque Terminator armor and armed with massive maces of absolution. These warriors are the anvil upon which the chapter's enemies are broken, their unyielding faith and discipline unmatched. Beyond their prowess in combat, they are sworn to the inner circle, entrusted with the chapter's darkest secrets. The Deathwing Knights are a bulwark against heresy and treachery, their solemn duty to hunt the fallen and bring them to justice, no matter the cost. The Ravenwing Black Knights. Ravenwing Black Knights are the elite vanguard of the Second Company, riding into battle on sleek black bikes equipped with advanced weaponry. Masters of speed and precision, they strike like a thunderbolt, sowing chaos among enemy ranks. As part of the inner circle, they are privy to greater truths than most of their brethren. Their missions often steeped in the shadowy hunt for the fallen. The Black Knights embody the swift, relentless justice of the Dark Angels, and their every action a testament to the chapter's devotion to redemption and secrecy.
Yeah, oftentimes like the fallen are they hear of the Dark Angels coming and they're like, I gotta get the fuck out of here. So they're flee. So the Ravenwing and the Black Knights, they're definitely helpful in that where you're not outrunning a motorbike, no matter how Astartes fast you are, just not gonna be able to do it. Um, they also use the Deathwing, as we've mentioned a few times here. So the Deathwing and the Ravenwing from the Hexagrammaton, they kept. And yeah, we'll dive into a little bit more about the Deathwing now in the 40k era. So they are the Guardians of Redemption. The first company of the Dark Angels, revered as the Deathwing, stand as the embodiment of the chapter's unyielding resolve and ancient traditions. This august brotherhood is composed exclusively of veteran Astartes, each clad in bone-white Terminator armor, a color steeped in myth and meaning, symbolizing both death and unbroken defiance. No power armor adorns these warriors, only the ancient ceramite-clad relics of war are worthy of their station. In the days of the Great Crusade, when the Dark Angels marched as a legion, their armor was jet black, a reflection of their somber purpose. Though the heresy wrought untold changes, the first and second companies retained their shadowy hues, honoring the memory of the Caliban's fall. Yet the Deathwing's white armor emerged from a tale of valor and sacrifice. During a Tyranid Genesealer invasion on Plains World, a lone squad of Terminators painted their armor bone white, a hue they believed marked their death. Against all odds, they triumphed, reclaiming the world and preserving the genetic legacy of the chapter. Their victory became a hallowed legend in tribute, all Deathwing warriors now bear the color of death as a badge of honor. The Deathwing are warriors without peer, marked by their unshakable stoicism and refusal to yield. They do not falter, even against insurmountable odds, invoking the memory of their forebears who saved a recruitment world at the edge of annihilation. Charged with the most sacred of Dark Angel duties, the eternal hunt for the fallen. They are the sword and shield of the chapter's crusade for redemption. To the Deathwing, the fallen are the ultimate foe, and no adversary, mortal or Xenos, can rival the weight of the ancient betrayal. The Deathwing in battle. When the Deathwing goes to war, it is as if the wrath of the lion himself has been unleashed. Eschewing the standard codex structure, the first company is a force of devastating versatility, composed of Terminator squads armed with an array of weapons to annihilate their enemies both at range and in brutal melee. They excel in rapid strike teleport assaults, emerging in flashes of light amidst a thunderous storm of bolter fire. The enemies of the Imperium often die in the first instant, before they can comprehend the terrible might they face. The Deathwing strikes are honored or honed by the precise reconnaissance of the Ravenwing, their swift brethren. Guided by the Ravenwing signals, the Deathwing's teleportation is pinpoint, delivering them directly into the heart of the enemy forces. By the time their foes see the ceramite-clad warriors appear, it is already too late. The Deathwing strikes like a hammer of vengeance, their presence a death blow against those who defy the Emperor's will.
Yeah, I mean, what can you do against a wall of Terminators? Not a lot. It is cool aesthetically if you ever look at the Deathwing models.
Yeah.
Of course, they're wearing their traditional Terminator armor, but they typically have a little bit more like refinement in some of their details. Like they look a little more Baroque. They typically are a little more knightly looking with like tabards and things like that. Their helmets are unique and again in that almost like a knightly aesthetic around them, which obviously fits their theme. But yeah, they're pretty cool. I like them.
Yeah.
All right. The Deathwing Knights are the line's legacy. Among the warriors of the Deathwing Knights stand as an elite within an elite. These silent paragons of nobility and strength carry an aura of mythic gravitas, as if the spirit of the Lionel Johnson lingers in their presence. Their Baroque armor, fearsome weapons, such as the Flail of the Unforgiven and Storm Shields, are symbols of their unflinching resolve. These knights are more than warriors, they are aspirants to command, groomed for the highest echelons of the chapter. Each Deathwing Knight is a member of the chapter's secretive inner circle, privy to the deepest truths of the Dark Angel's tragic history. Their path is not won by skill in battle alone, but by unrelenting dedication to the chapter's veiled crusade against the fallen. Only those who embody the chapter's unbreakable purpose may ascend to this station. So yeah, they're both an elite warrior, but also inducted into the chapter's secrets. Command squads of the inner circle. From among the Deathwing, command squads are formed, handpicked by masters and librarians for tasks of great importance. These veterans are paragons of adaptability, often joined by specialists like ancients, apothecaries, or champions of the first company. When Belial, the Grand Master of the Deathwing, leads such squads into the fray, they become an unstoppable force, tearing through enemy lines and striking at the heart of their foes' command structures. So this is kind of typical for chapter organization anyways, where you kind of create a command squad and like have your chapter elite specialists, which people if not familiar with, yeah, your ancient is like your banner bearer. You might have a champion with you. You might take on like an apothecary or a librarian. You'll probably elevate a couple of veterans. Now they're lieutenants, but in the past they used to be veterans.
You have a chaplain, although he might not be necessarily attached to a squad, but he is attached to the company.
Yeah, and you even have chaplain command squads too. They introduced later, so the chaplain might handpick a couple of guys to go with them onto the field. But it's pretty typical stuff for modern chapters.
Yeah.
The Deathwing's connection to the Inner Circle binds them irrevocably to the chapter's secret crusade. As the ultimate guardians of the Dark Angel's honor, they ensure that the stain of the fallen is erased, whether through the annihilation of traitors on the battlefield or their capture for interrogation in the dungeons of the Rock. The Deathwing serve as a chapter's inexorable hand of judgment. So yeah, of course, if they're inducted into the Inner Circle, they know what's going on, and they're probably going to be the guys that grab the actual fallen person or slay the actual fallen person. Not that no one else is allowed to, but they're actually seeking that person out, and they're moving with a purpose to take that individual, dead or alive.
Yeah,
The
for
Shadow
sure,
of Redemption. When the Deathwing descends, it is not merely a military act. It is the unfolding of an ancient saga. To the enemies of the Emperor, their coming is a harbinger of doom, an unstoppable maelstrom that grinds resistance into dust. To the fallen, their arrival is reckoning, a grim reminder that the sins of the past will never be forgotten. In their wake, only silence remains, save for the whispers of oaths renewed and the unending quest for absolution.
Yeah, very cool. The first company, man, that I feel like that's such an iconic force in 40K. Just the all Terminators. No other chapter can call the same might that the Dark Angels can when it comes to the first company.
All right, should we get into the second company, the Ravenwing Company? Known as the Ravenwing, they ride forth as an enigmatic storm of vengeance and precision. Cloaked in the jet black armor of their legions past, these warriors are selected not only for their mastery of rapid assault, using swift bikes and agile land speeders, but for their unyielding fortitude against the whispered blasphemies of the fallen angels. Their blackened panoply harkens back to the days of the Horus Heresy, embodying both the legacy of the chapter and the shadowy purpose that guides their relentless hunt. The hidden purpose of the Ravenwing. Only those admitted into the hallowed inner circle understand the true calling of the Ravenwing, to seek out and capture the fallen, whose betrayal during the heresy stains the honor of the Dark Angels. The Ravenwing exists as hunters, bearing the burden of an ancient guilt. Their purpose is not merely vengeance, but redemption. For only the blood or repentance of the fallen can cleanse the sins of their chapter and restore their place in the Emperor's grace. A company beyond the Codex. Like the Deathwing, the Ravenwing defies the rigid structure of the Codex Astartes. It is an elite force of rapid destruction, divided into attack squadrons and fire support squadrons, each yielding specialized tools of annihilation. At the heart of their tactics lies the speed and precision of biker squads, which form the bulk of the second company. These warriors are the spearhead of the Ravenwing's assault, driving into the enemy with twin-linked bolters blazing striking hard before disappearing into the shadows of the wind. Yet their doctrine is one of cunning. To avoid becoming entangled where their speed might be dismissed, for to linger is to invite ruin. If their charge does not break the foe, they vanish in a blur, leaving their enemies disoriented, vulnerable to the next strike. When a target has been identified, teleport homers carried by Ravenwing riders summon the hammer of the Deathwing, ensuring the quarry is obliterated with unrelenting force. Instruments of destruction. The assault bikes of the Ravenwing are nimble engines of war, laying down suppressive fire as they dart through the enemy's lines. When heavier firepower is required, attack bikes armed with heavy bolters or multi-meltas clear the path, destroying armored threats and ensuring their brethren's advance remains unimpeded. Their merciless nature is unparalleled. No foe who flees the Ravenwing's wrath can escape their pursuit. Now, am I wrong here? The bikes are almost like speeders from Star Wars, speeder bikes from Star Wars, like hovering craft.
No, they are like actual motorbikes with tires.
They also have land
Yeah.
speeders, and those hover. Yeah. They used to have a special character who was flying on a jet bike, and it was a very unique piece of war gear to him alone. It was like the only jet in old lore, anyways. It was the only jet bike to survive into 40K. What was his name, Mark? Master of the Ravenwing.
Samuel, I believe.
Samuel. Yeah. Sam-E-L. Yeah.
Samuel, sure. Yeah. They also have a bunch of cool, unique vehicles that go into this. Like, yeah, they have the one jet bike, but they also have aircraft. They have the Nephilim jet fighter, and I think they have one called the Dark Talon as well. That is a very nimble aircraft. And then they also have a couple unique types of land speeders that are a lot bigger than the standard size. Yeah. The Ravenwing Black Knights. With the Ravenwing are the legendary Black Knights, the masters of mobile warfare, who have proven their worth through the harrowing 7 rights of the Raven. To ascend to this exalted rank is to be initiated into the deeper truths of the chapter, the unspoken truths of their eternal hunt, and the shadowy deeds of their ancestors. The Black Knights ride to war upon the heavily customized Mark IV Raven pattern assault bikes, each equipped with the fearsome plasma talents capable of obliterating even the mightiest of foes. Their melee prowess is unmatched, wielding Corvus hammers, weapons of ancient Calibanite design, once used to hunt the great beasts of the mythic world. With supreme skill, they charge into battle, striking with an eerie precision, even through the most treacherous terrain.
So I have a question about the Black Knights. Historically, I've only ever seen Ravenwing wearing black, in black armor. Is that just because those happen to be Black Knights that people are playing as, or are all Ravenwing clad in black, and then you have a distinctive subgroup that are Black Knights?
Yeah, all Ravenwing wear black, just like all Deathwing wear white, and it is that homage back to the original Dark Angels all wore black, kind of. So it's that homage back to that.
Right. So the Black Knights specifically are another rank within the Ravenwing, but on the surface they're all wearing black anyways.
Yeah. So like the Black Knights, they know the secrets of the chapter, where the Ravenwing might know about a little bit of it, but then the Ravenwing are like the ones truly to be like, okay, no, there definitely is a fallen in this area. We've seen them calling the Deathwing. They're that next step of hierarchy to get the job done, to verify the job and all that. So
Okay. Yeah, just clarifying. That's what I always assumed, but I just wasn't sure.
Yeah. I we're such old gamers that we've known about the Ravenwing for a long time, but like the Black Knights, they came out I think around like 7th edition, where the Ravenwing has always existed.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those tag-ons.
Same with the those new Terminators were kind of a newer addition, that subgroup of knights within the Deathwing. Yeah.
Exactly. The Command of Shadows. The elite Ravenwing command squads consist of seasoned Black Knights who ride as swift and deadly vanguard, forming an honor guard for the mounted chapter officers and executing missions of critical importance. These squads are composed of masters of their craft, including apothecaries to preserve the chapter's genetic legacy, standard bearers who rally the faithful, and the fearsome Ravenwing company champion, whose blade bears the heritage of Caliban itself. When the Ravenwing command takes to the field, they are a beacon of death. Their fluttering banners inspire their brothers, even as they herald doom for the enemies of the Emperor. Beneath the sable banners, the Ravenwing's assault strikes like a tempest, swift and inescapable, shrouded in mystery, yet blazing with the righteous fury of the Imperium. That's such a cool image. Like that's so knightly. We've talked so much about how they're knights in space, but just the banners on the back of bikes, which represent horses and stuff, just flailing behind, like all the different heraldry and colors. And yeah, it'd be such a cool image.
Yeah, the two most knightly factions within the Space Marines are obviously the Black Templars, which everyone knows, but also the Dark Angels have very strong knight aesthetics. and they pull from like the Teutonic Knights. There's definitely Templar influence in the lore, and then obviously the winged hussars too, with those little back arcs that they have. The Polish hussars, they have like little, they have like little wings on their not on their jetbikes, on their bikes. That they're not like your traditional wings out the sides. It's like wings on the back of them that are just like the winged hussars used to use.
All for the rule of cool.
At least according to some people. There's debate about that.
Deep debate on Reddit about that, eh?
Yeah, of course. You think having horns on your helmet makes you a better fighter? Yeah.
A storm unleashed. The Ravenwing moves with the precision of a predator. Their tactics a dance of speed, fire, and shadow. Against them, the foe can only stumble in confusion, their formation shattered by the lightning-fast strikes and relentless pursuit. In the name of the Lion and the Emperor, the Ravenwing delivers the Emperor's justice, ensuring that no enemy escapes and no sin goes unpunished. Their hunt is endless, their purpose unbroken, and their legacy as eternal as the stars themselves.
Cool. All right, let's get into the rest of the chapter. So after the Deathwing and the Ravenwing, what do we got left? The Dark Angels chapter structure embodies both the traditional wisdom of the Codex Astartes and the unique shadowed legacy of their eternal quest for redemption. Beneath the towering spires of their monastic fortresses, the chapter's companies marshal their might with precision, their organization a blend of ancient ritual and adaptive strategy. The battle companies, the 3rd, 4th, and 5th companies from the indomitable core of the chapter, known as the battle companies, these are the hammer and shield of the Dark Angels, carrying the weight of prolonged campaigns and standing firm at the heart of great conflicts. In the crucible of war, they are the fulcrum upon which the chapter's wrath pivots, enduring the fiercest assaults and delivering the decisive strikes that break the enemy's will. The tactical reserve companies, the 6th and 7th companies, known as tactical companies, hold the line as reserves, ready to surge into battle where the need is greatest. Whether shoring up faltering defenses, spearheading feints, or halting enemy encirclements, their adaptability ensures that the chapter's strategies unfold flawlessly. Comprised entirely of tactical squads, they are a versatile shield, a scalpel of the unforgiven. The Assault Company is with a fury unmatched. The 8th Company embodies the chapter's thirst for vengeance. Comprised of assault squads often equipped with jump packs, these warriors descend like vengeful angels upon the enemy's strongholds. Their lightning-fast strikes and brutal hand-to-hand combat make them the sword that cuts through the heart of the foe, their arrival heralding certain doom. The Devastator Company, the 9th Company, is a bastion of firepower, and is the chapter's fire support force. Armed with the heaviest weapons the chapter can muster, its Devastator squads rain destruction upon the enemies of the Emperor. Whether laying down withering suppression fire or shattering enemy fortifications, they are the anvil upon which the chapter's foes are broken. And the 10th Company, the Scout Company, stands apart, a crucible of transformation for neophytes seeking to ascend to full Astartes status. These scouts are the chapter's eyes and ears, gathering intelligence and striking from the shadows. Though they rarely fight as a single cohesive force, their presence on the battlefield is the harbinger of the chapter's future, their training shaped by the unforgiving trials of war. So yeah, a lot of these follow pretty closely to the other Codex compliant companies outside of the Deathwing and the Ravenwing. They start to kind of match up a little more with the other chapters. I think there's some variance on the company numbers just because of the Deathwing and the Ravenwing, but overall it's pretty similar.
Yeah, for sure. Now my favorite part, the Air Indomitus and the Primaris integration. I love hearing about this. How does a chapter with so many secrets take on the fact that these random fucks are going to come into their chapter and take over? I'm sure they welcome them with a fucking bloodied fist, right? Tell me they
Open arms.
Oh, open arms, eh? That's what they chose. Okay, lay it on me.
This is why they're hiring a new story writer. The last guy screwed things up.
Fuck, eh?
Yeah.
Like,
it's funny we don't know their name. I think
ain't that
I think
the truth?
after everyone went after Matt Ward all those years ago, they probably stopped publishing the names of the authors.
Yeah, we've all heard of the Horus heresy and the Wardian heresy, but we haven't heard of the 8th edition writer heresy yet. What's his name? We need to know. I need his name, number, and address.
We're now unforgiven until we seek vengeance.
And publish it on Warhammer.
Warhammer Legal, get on that. All right. All right, let's get into the Era Indomitus. In the wake of the Indomitus Crusade and the introduction of the Primaris Space Marines, the Dark Angels companies have evolved, integrating new doctrines and formations. The battle companies now field a mix of 6 battle line squads, 2 close support squads, and 2 fire support squads, blending versatility and raw power. The reserve companies from the 6th to the 9th remain specialized in their roles. The 6th and 7th, now designated battle line companies, bring the strength of 10 to 20 squads to the battlefield, bolstering the chapter's ranks and unyielding resolve. The 8th company, now the close support company, strikes where the melee prowess is most required, while the 9th company, reimagined as the fire support company, wields devastation with unparalleled might. The eternal legacy of the 10th. The 10th company retains its sacred role as a training ground for new warriors, comprising both scouts and vanguard space marines. These recruits tread the fine line between raw potential and honed mastery. Deployed alongside their veteran brethren, they serve as reconnaissance and advanced strike elements, their actions forging the foundations of the chapter's enduring strength. A legacy written in fire and shadow. The Dark Angel's structure reflects both their adherence to the Emperor's vision and the veiled truths of their hidden purpose. Each company, from the stalwart battle lines to the vengeful assault squads and watchful scouts, plays its role in the chapter's ceaseless war for redemption. Together they form a symphony of destruction, a hymn to duty and repentance, sung in bolter fire and clash of
So they
blades.
accept them with open arms, and the chapter's reforged once again. But this is kind of nothing new for the Dark Angels, honestly. Like, throughout the Great Crusade and the Horus Heresy, maybe a little less so, but throughout the Great Crusade, they were constantly tweaking the way of warfare, constantly coming up with a new wing to add. Like, they found this way was a good way to wage war, so they'd come up with this whole new part of the hexagrammaton. So, to integrate, yeah, sure. To change from the Codex Astartes, yeah, sure. That's kind of nothing new for them.
Yeah, but the thing with Primaris is they were pre-existing strangers pretty much being welcomed into the chapter, at least the first batch of Primaris. They weren't raised from within, right? So that's a huge problem for the war.
Yeah, and I agree with that aspect of it for sure. Where, like, those guys that came from the outside, there's no way they were told anything about anything.
All right, so chapter recruitment. Upon the desolation of Caliban, the Dark Angels were rendered a chapter without a homeworld. Their heritage sundered, yet their purpose unbroken. In the wake of this loss, they cast their gaze across the Imperium, seeking recruits from myriad planets scattered like stars upon the vast tapestry of humanity. Their preference fell to feudal worlds, whose primitive pre-industrial societies mirrored the noble yet savage Caliban of old, before the Emperor's light first graced its forests. Each of these worlds, the Dark Angels appeared as enigmatic harbingers descending from the heavens only once within a span of a human lifetime. The strongest and most promising juveniles are claimed, spirited away from their families to undertake a destiny far beyond mortal ken. For these aspirants, the past is obliterated, identity is stripped away, as they are tested, body and soul, in the crucible of transformation. Success marks their rebirth as neophytes of the chapter, while failure bears a far grimmer price. Those found unworthy are subjected to the chapter's grim technology, their minds wiped clean and their bodies reshaped into mindless servitors, mechanical thralls bound eternally to the Dark Angel's will. In their secretive nature, the Dark Angels eschew the widespread use of chapter serf and bondsmen, wary of exposing their labyrinthian secrets to human fragility. Instead, they rely heavily on servitors, silent, obedient constructs, for the menial and laborious tasks required to sustain their eternal vigil. In the aftermath of the Horus Heresy, the chapter sought to rebuild and recruited solely from a single world, the planet known as Plains World. But this reliance brought tragedy. The planet fell into the insidious corruption of tyrannid gene stealers, leaving its populace enslaved and its skies shadowed by Xenos horrors. When the Deathwing, the elite terminators of the Dark Angels, returned to find their recruiting ground defiled, they faced a harrowing reality. Against impossible odds, they prepared for battle, knowing that the chance of victory was but a fleeting hope. In a solemn act of ritual, oh, sorry, did you want to say something, Mark, there?
Yeah, we might as well drop it here. Plains World is interesting. It's very old lore, this little bit that we're reading. Yeah, like it's from like second edition, if not earlier, maybe even first. But man, some of the artwork for this Plains World recruits were very Native American vibed. And it's interesting, kind of. I don't ever picture Native Americans when I'm talking Dark Angels, but if this is like their main recruitment world, like, yeah, we got Native American Knights kind of concept going on. It's a weird kind of collide of images in my mind.
Yeah, and like a couple of little Easter eggs kind of carry over from that is like a lot of the feather motif that the Dark Angels use was part of that indigenous aspect. And even their names were like more Native American sounding too, from that really old lore. And then they kind of dropped that and went more with the angelic name theme.
But there's a new fresh little image that you can add to your Dark Angel mindset of when they take off their knightly hussar themed helmet underneath. It's a Native American.
In honor of those valiant Terminators, the armor of all who don the Deathwing mantle has since borne the color of bone, a sacred tribute to their defiance in the face of oblivion. This tragedy taught the chapter's inner circle a grave lesson. No longer could they entrust their future to a single world. Thus they broadened their gaze, harvesting strength from the Imperium's countless planets, ensuring the continuation of their secretive and storied legacy. The Dark Angels stand as enigmas, cloaked in mystery and shrouded in secrecy. Their deeds spoken of in whispers. They are the first legion whose purpose is bound to the shadows, their oath sealed in blood and honor, ever vigilant, ever relentless in the unending war for humanity's soul.
Rumor has it is a recruiting over the United States right now.
Oh no.
That's kind of very. I was kind of thinking it's very alien abduction of them to take their recruits. Like they just come in once
It's less
a
bleak.
lifetime, and no one knows what they are on a feudal planet. Like kind of traumatic.
No, that's the secret knowledge you get inducted to, Jordan. You got to wait till you're higher down the.
Yeah, over in New Jersey right now. Yeah.
Well, how else are you going to genetically test people, Jordan?
Do the Dark Angels do butt probes? And their recruits?
Yeah, no, it is really funny to think about. Like, you know, oftentimes they talk about recruiting the biggest and the strongest, fastest, the most cunning, maybe the most criminal, somebody who's killed a man, but they're also 12.
It's worth noting, like I think I might have mentioned this in an episode a long time ago, just the sheer number of potential recruits in the galaxy. Like you're talking, I think, upwards of quadrillions of people, and only like the top 1,000th ever get in. Like you're talking like a fraction of a percent. Like you could go through the entire population of Earth right now from every age group, and not one of us could be worthy of becoming a Space Marine. Easy. Yeah. Or it cripples you, like, okay, you survived, but now you're going to get turned into a servitor or a chapter serf because it wrecked your body. It's a good segue.
Yeah, so there might be one or two people on Earth right now that might be.
Yeah, and so not only is there like that aspect, there's like three aspects. There's the age aspect, there's like being the best of the best of the best, which none of us fucking are. And then there's also the aspect of being compatible with the gene seed. There's like a genetic compatibility feature too that's built in. And a lot of the aspirants die, like they just can't take the gene seed. They might be 97% compatible, but then 3% of the time they die. But a lot of them are only like 3% compatible, and then all the time they die. So we'll talk about the chapter Gene Seed now. As the noble first of the Legiones Astartes, the Dark Angels bear the legacy of one of the most untainted and pristine gene seeds in the Imperium. Their genetic lineage is a testament to the perfection of the Emperor's design, unmarred by the degradation that plagues so many of their brother chapters. This purity is further reflected in the Primaris Space Marines. Of course it is. Whose gene seed is so lofty, so pure that I don't ever want to talk about it, but has been universally hailed by the chapter's apothecaries as unparalleled in both quality and vitality. For the Sons of the Lion, this exceptional inheritance is both a source of strength and a point of silent pride.
Okay, hear me out. I'm going to defend this for a second. It would make sense because we know like the Primaris Marines were actually created closer to the time when the Primarchs walked the earth and were locked in stasis, that their gene seed would actually be of better quality because it's closer to the source material versus 10,000 years of degradation and reuse and recycling. So that part does actually make sense.
Let's mock Purge in the chat for a hot minute. You do realize that some of us are in the special forces and some of us might have what it takes. No, dude, you don't. I'm sorry to tell you, none of us do. Go, get fucked. Like, none of us would make it. None of us are going to be Astartes, man. Cry more.
Even the most elite athlete, elite special forces you could think of today, it still pales in comparison. If you like multiply the population of the Earth by like 30 times, you'd have to get the top of that group of people. So yeah, the statistical chances of even one of us being good enough, and again, I don't care where you recruit from.
And what are the chances it's Purge? I'm going to say a dude that plays Warhammer. No, man, unless you're just eating protein and doing push-ups, you're not going to make it all day, every day. And I see you in the chat every session. So I don't think you're doing that, my friend. Despite the unparalleled purity of their gene seed, the reluctance of the High Lords of Terror to use it for the creation of new chapters remain a perplexing enigma. Whispered in the halls of power suggests that its resentience is rooted not in the gene seed itself, but in the shadowed reputation of the chapter and their successors, collectively known as the Unforgiven. These chapters share an uncommonly close bond, their unity a force unto itself, yet they are shrouded in an aura of aloofness and suspicion. Outsiders often find the Unforgiven inscrutable, their trust difficult to earn, and their silence unnerving. There are tales, dark and persistent, of the Dark Angels and their successors, abruptly withdrawing from battlefields when faced with the scrutiny of an inquisitor or missionary. These unexplained retreats have fueled speculation of hidden agendas and whispers accusations of legion building. Over centuries, this air of mystery has bred distrust, particularly within the Inquisition and other arms of the imperial hierarchy. For all their valor and loyalty in the Emperor's wars, the Unforgiven remain a force viewed asking, what the fuck? I don't think that's a word. That's a typo. It must be. By those who pry into the secrets. Yet even as they are passed over for many foundings, the Dark Angels have occasionally been granted the right to establish new chapters. Such foundings are often veiled in secrecies, their records mysteriously erased from Imperial archives shortly after inception. These new chapters, outwardly indistinguishable from others, wage war for the Imperium, but remain irrevocably bound to the hidden purpose of their progenitors, the hunt for the fallen. In the Era Indominus, a subtle shift has begun to take shape. The Adeptus Terra's historical reluctance to sanction foundings using Dark Angel's gene seed appears to be waning. Some attribute this change to the influence of Reboot Gilliman himself and the resurrected Primarch, recognizing the Dark Angel's genetic purity and their enduring loyalty to the Imperium's cause. Others, more cynical, suggest that the growing strength of the Unforgiving serves a calculated purpose, a potential counterbalance to the dominance of the Ultramarines and their successors within the politics of Terra and Mars. Whatever the truth, the Dark Angels remain an enduring paradox. Paragons of purities whose shadowed history and veiled purpose inspire both awe and unease. Their bonds are unbreakable, their secrets impenetrable, and their legion legacy as the First Legion looms large over the stars they protect, and the darkness they seek to conceal. Yeah. Yeah, it's cool, like, we talked a little bit about that, like, the more they write about it, it's harder to kind of infer some of these, like, are the Dark Angels building another chapter of, like, unforgiven to eventually do something with? Well, no. Like, we know that even in the Horus Heresy, they were the most loyal, and the ones that did turn, they were a very specific group of people left on Caliban, and they ain't recruiting from Caliban no more.
Let's get into chapter beliefs. The Dark Angels, steadfast in their devotion, offer homage to the Emperor of mankind, yet their veneration diverges sharply from the dogma of the ecclesiarchy. To the Sons of the Lion, the Emperor is no deity to be worshipped, but the pinnacle of human achievement, a mortal of unparalleled greatness, and the architect of the Imperium's destiny. This conviction, rooted in the ideals of the Primarch, has long set them apart, both revered and misunderstood. As with all first founding chapters, the Dark Angels revere their Primarch, Lionel Johnson, as deeply as they do the Emperor himself. In their eyes, the Emperor is their creator and sovereign, not a divine being, but the ultimate exemplar of mankind's potential. This perspective is both their strength and their burden, a philosophy that mirrors the enigmatic nature of the chapter. Central to their existence, however, is a quest for penance and relentless purpose, the unending hunt for the fallen. These traitorous brethren are swept into the warp's chaos during the cataclysmic destruction of Caliban, their betrayal a stain upon the honor of the chapter. For 10 millennia, the Dark Angels have pursued them with unwavering resolve, believing with unshakable faith that their shame can only be expunged through the repentance of every last fallen angel. Scattered across the vastness of time and space, the fallen are elusive, their presence a whisper upon the galactic winds. Yet the Dark Angels will follow any trail, no matter how faint or perilous, to capture one of their wayward kin. Every rumor is a beacon, every lead a sacred charge, or in the redemption of the fallen lies the redemption of the chapter itself. So that's also good to note that, like, they're going after every lead, every thing that could potentially be a fallen, but it doesn't mean they always do find a fallen at the end of that chain, right? Somewhere something sounds like it could be, and then they follow it to its logical conclusion. Turns out it's just another radical or another Chaos Space Marine or something else altogether. But they're out there looking. When a fallen is captured, he is brought to the Rock, the sanctum of the Dark Angel's secrets. There, in the suffocating depths of the lightless dungeons, the infamous interrogator chaplains ply their grim trade. These fearsome figures, relentless and implacable, seek to wrest repentance from the captive's soul by any means necessary. Should a fallen repent, his end will be swift, a merciful release from his tormented existence. Yet more often their defiance endures, their refusal met with agonizing methods designed to break even the most hardened traitor. Death is their common fate, but for the Dark Angels, this is but a necessary sacrifice to inscribe another name within the hallowed pages of the Book of Salvation, a ledger of atonement that marks their unending path to absolution. Thus, the Dark Angels march forward, shadowed by the weight of their secrets and driven by a mission as eternal as the stars themselves. In their hearts burns the hope of redemption, yet it is a hope tempered by the grim reality of their duty. A quest as noble as it is harrowing, and a burden only they can bear. So it is really important to note here that this was true up until the return of the Lion. So things are going to change radically when we get to that point, Mark. I know you mentioned that earlier on in the episode, but this whole thing of like, you're not getting redeemed in the sense of like, okay, we'll let you back into the ranks of the Dark Angels. Redemption to the Dark Angels is death. They would just prefer to extract confessions and everything out of you first before you meet that ultimate end. But that's different. That's very different now, and I'm not going to get into it because we'll save that for later. But just to say that we know it's different, we acknowledge that, and we'll move on.
All right, should we get into how they look? How they look like? So, chapter appearance. The Deathwing, the elite first company of the Dark Angels, are clad in the stark bone white of their ceremonial armor. A color as chilling as it is symbolic. Their somber hue, a departure from the chapter's traditional green, signifies their purity of purpose and their role as relentless executioner of the chapter's hidden agenda. Their armor is adorned with symbols of the chapter's dark history, the winged sword of the Dark Angels, purity seals, and heraldic icons that evoke both awe and dread. Their Terminator armor, ancient and revered, bristles with the finest weapons of the Imperium, Stormbolters, Power Fists, and the mighty Thunder Hammers, each a testament to their status as the mailed fist of the chapter, tasked with delivering the final, crushing blow to their enemies. Their visage is made even more fearsome by the dark visors of their helmets, which seem to harbor the weight of millennia-old secrets, casting an aura of grim inevitability wherever they tread. In stark contrast to the Deathwing's resolute might, the Ravenwing epitomizes speed and cunning, their appearance as sleek and predatory as the lightning strikes they are famed for. Their armor is a glossy jet black, a shadow upon the battlefield, adorned with crimson and white accents that signify their role as hunters. Mounted upon their swift bikes and land speeders, the warriors of the Ravenwing are as much an unstoppable force as they are an elusive phantom. Their iconography often featured wing motifs, representing the speed and vigilance of their craft. And their war gear includes specialized targeting arrays and plasma weaponry to ensure that no quarry escapes their pursuit. Even their vehicles are masterpieces of tactical design, cloaked in shrouding devices that allow them to disappear into the gloom, embodying the chapter's relentless pursuit of the fallen. The rest of the chapter, from the steadfast tactical marines to the venerable dreadnoughts, maintain the signature of green armor of the Dark Angels, a hue as deep as the forests of Caliban from which they draw their heritage. These dark green complemented by ivory-colored robes worn over their armor, symbolizing both their monastic traditions and their devotion to secrecy. Their armor is meticulously maintained, adorned with devotional inscriptions, purity seals, and relics of battle. Each piece a silent testament to their martial prowess and spiritual discipline. The warrior's solemn expression and the stern visages carved into their helms mirror the chapter's enigmatic reputation, conveying an air of unyielding resolve. When deployed as a cohesive strike force or in the smaller squads across the vast war zones of the Imperium, the Dark Angels project an image of implacable might, their presence a harbinger of the Emperor's justice and their own veiled purpose.
Yeah, very cool. I love their chapter badge with the wings and the sword. It's also cool to have a chapter that has so many different color schemes in it. We got the white Deathwing, we got the black Ravenwing, and then we got the rest of the chapter in that like dark kind of green. And all on the table combined. It's super cool looking.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense with the Deathwing and the Ravenwing, their color scheme, but like all the pictures I had looked at of people's uh, Dark Angel chapter was like almost exclusively like that dark green, I guess. But
Yeah, like you know, if chapter has 1,000 guys, 800 of those guys are wearing the dark green, and
right,
only 200, 100's wearing white, 100's wearing black. So up
yeah,
next, we'll dive into the successor chapters. The bond between the Dark Angels and their successor chapters, collectively known as the Unforgiven, is a unique and formidable connection, unlike that of any other within the Adeptus Astartes. This brotherhood transcends the typical camaraderie of Space Marine chapters. Rooted in their shared lineage and shadowy secrets of their origin, the Unforgiven are united by the weight of their shared shame, the betrayal of Caliban, and the unyielding oath to atone for it. While each successor chapter operates independently, all answer to the summons of the Dark Angel when the call is made, their combined might forming a force of terrifying cohesion and power. This unity is further reinforced by the Inner Circle, a clandestine network that stretches across the Unforgiven, ensuring that the hunt for the fallen remains a shared and sacred mission. To outsiders, this close relationship often appears as insular and enigmatic, furthering the aura of mistrust that surrounds the Dark Angels and their kin. Yet with the Unforgiven, this bond is a source of unparalleled strength, a testament to their unwavering purpose and their determination to see their shame expunged at any cost. If these fallen are so hard to find and you have to find them in just the right spot and you have to do it quick, otherwise they're going to vanish. Like, if there's a chapter closer than the Dark Angels, if there's a successor chapter, they're going to spread that word to them and be like, there's rumors of people over here. Like, you're the closest chapter. Like, you have to go check that out. Priority mission over there.
Yeah, and that could lead to them like abandoning whatever mission they were currently on, right? Like, you're not just twiddling your thumbs as a space marine. You're probably engaged in some kind of affair, and then you get the call from, chapter command, like, hey, we just got wind of something. We need you to check it out. So, yeah, it's cool. It makes sense.
Yeah, it's cool. We kind of talked too about just how because of this, even the high lords don't want to use their gene seed to make more companies. Like, have they really broken down? Like, did they really follow the codex?
Yeah, and that's where that risk of suspicion arises. Like, okay, if they do go rogue, it's not just a chapter falling anymore. Now it's like a legion's worth of space marines. Right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's cool. I like it. Imperial Fists have a similar thing called the Last Wall Protocol, but this is not an Imperial Fist episode, so we won't talk about it.
Cool. I'm gonna find that Dreadwing Successor chapter here. Might take me a minute, so maybe I'll come back to that.
Okay.
Oh, no, I got it. I found it. It is. It's gone.
Yeah, you lost it. Just like the Fallen, it disappeared. Real quick before I get into the next section, because this is the section I'm getting into, Purge in the chat is asking, is the Return of the Lion known by the chapter? I thought he was roaming, slaying dragons without them knowing. No, he definitely has come back and has restructured the chapter in a way. There was a while there where he was lost, but go on, Mark.
Yeah, and I think that like roaming, slaying dragons without knowing, I think that happened for a hot minute. Like he came back, he did his little thing, and then now he's reunited with the chapter. But more on that later for sure.
Yeah.
Also, the Star Phantoms are what is a successor chapter that is born of the Dreadwing, which was like the wing that is known for just like all the phosphorus weapons, rad weapons, all that kind of cool shit.
The most destructive weapons.
Oh no, sorry. Massed armored assault. Sorry, my bad. The Dreadwing are massed armored assaults. Land Raider, Spartan tanks, Mastodons, Felglaves.
Okay, so their armory is probably pretty unique then.
Yeah, for sure.
That's cool.
But having said that, like it would be cool to go through all the Dark Angel chapters and see if the other 3 made it into one of the chapters, or if that leaves room for somebody out there to make a fucking badass homebrew.
Fuzz in the chat saying the Consecrators is what I was thinking of, and they're thought to be from the Firewing.
Okay, interesting.
Right.
Very cool.
Okay, well, let's talk about a group that aren't any of the wings. Let's talk about the Fallen Angels here. As the light of Caliban's final days faded into the dark annals of history, the seeds of a secret order began to take root. The inner circle, born from the ashes of betrayal and embers of vengeance, emerged as a shadowed and an enigmatic force within the Dark Angels. What began as a makeshift council soon grew into a labyrinthine organization, its tendrils spreading not only through the First Legion, but into their scattered successor chapters. With Caliban gone and the Rock their only sanctuary, the Dark Angels established a recruitment world, ensuring that the blood of new generations would flow to replace those who fell in the ceaseless crucible of war. Under the austere regimen of the chapter, recruits are shaped into warriors of unwavering loyalty, an ironclad brotherhood. These principles, steadfast and uncompromising, were passed down to the successor chapters like sacred relics. Yet amidst these rites of initiation, the grim legacy of Caliban's fall, the sins of their forebears, remained a hidden truth. Only the highest echelons of the chapter, the shadowed brethren of the inner circle, carried their dark burden, guarding it with a zealous resolve. By the 32nd millennium, the survivors of the Battle of Caliban had dwindled to a few venerable souls entombed within dreadnought sarcophagi. The truth of the fallen, the shattered kin who betrayed the lion and the emperor, became a closely guarded secret, whispered only among the trusted few. As veterans ascended through unseen layers of trust, fragments of this truth was revealed to them, a mosaic of sorrow and duty. With each revelation, they came to understand that their dual purpose extended beyond the Emperor's wars. The Sons of the Lion had become hunters in the shadows, scouring the stars to bring the fallen brethren to justice. The fallen, scattered across the galaxy, each followed their own twisted path. Many embraced the darkness of the warp, pledging allegiance to the dark gods and rising as heretic Astartes. In the age of the Great Rift, some ascended to the terrible power of demonhood. Others prowled the void as pirates or warlords, while a few carved out planetary empires, ruling with iron fists over systems wreathed in terror. There are those who, torn from time by the warp's cruel whimsy, emerged into the galaxy as if only moments had passed since the shattering of Caliban, their minds shattered by the paradox of millennia lost in an instant. These cursed souls often lashed out with unrelenting fury, screaming truths the inner circle had labored to bury. So yeah, that's a really cool, like, the Fallen take many different forms, and there could even be unique forms that you take with them, right? Like, it's cool that you could carve out your own little small empire. Purge was asking there, are the Fallen making their own chapters, or are they roaming warbands and individuals? The answer is all of the
Yeah.
above. They can be and doing anything. I like the idea of, more secular pirates and, others that have truly fallen to the dark gods. But also the interesting few who, in an instant at the fall of Caliban, got projected into the future. So to them, like, literally, Caliban just blew up. They don't know anything that happened in the last 10,000 years. They get flung into the galaxy as it is, and they're like, "What is going
Yeah.
on?
That
Who are the bad
that's a
guys?"
cool
Like,
little
yeah,
story beat too, for a way for there to constantly be new fallen appearing. Like you'd think after 10,000 years, like you'd find them all, but yeah, no, every year another fallen appears somewhere that you need to hunt down. So, um,
just falls right out of the sky.
a fallen angel right out of the sky. Yeah. And
Yeah.
one thing to picture about these guys, like they might not be walking around in power armor. They might not have access to that. That their power armor might have been destroyed, depending on who they swear allegiance to. Maybe they signed up with like a Black Legion and then they do have access to all the war gear. But yeah, if there's just some pirate lord, like he might just be this massive brute wearing robes and like he's not wearing power armor. He's not using a bolter no more. So it could open up some sweet conversion opportunity in my mind of just like these, almost like techno barbarians again.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, they might not be wearing their power armor on purpose because they don't want to get tagged as a fallen either, right? They're just like, yeah, I'm just gonna try and blend in as best as an 8 foot tall, muscle bound monstrosity can.
My planet
Right?
just loves protein. What can I say? It's
Yeah.
nothing to see here.
Not all fallen were consumed by madness or corruption. Some, tormented by guilt, lived as haunted nomads, eking out their existence on the fringes of the galaxy. Mercenaries, rogue traders, or shadowed figures with human societies, they sought redemption in deeds, striving to right their wrongs in ways the Dark Angels could never condone. So that's another element too, is there's some that genuinely regret what happened, and they're like, I'm gonna live as best as I can, or alone. They might just completely like go live in the wilderness and just want to be left alone by the galaxy and themselves. Really, there's a lot of fertile ground here to explore with the Fallen, which I absolutely love.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. Like they're not just exclusively become like enemies of the
Yeah.
state, if you will. Like they can choose to be hermits.
Nomads.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and sort of and even regret what they did, which is kind of an
Yeah.
interesting.
Now, that being said, they are still enemies of the state because the state sees them as enemies, but as individuals,
Sure, but they're not actively. You're correct, but they're not actively like trying to on a war against the Imperium.
yeah.
So
For solar decades, even centuries, the Dark Angels might hear no whisper of their quarry. But when signs of the Fallen are uncovered, the chapter's wrath is swift and merciless. The Ravenwing, masters of pursuit and precision, descend upon their prey, driving them to the trap. Then the Deathwing arrive, clad in their iconic bone-white armor, the mailed fist of the chapter's judgment. Together, these two heralds of destruction execute the grim task of which they are uniquely trained. So yeah, that gives a cool perspective too, with those like fallen angels that might have regretted what they're doing and they're even trying to do good. They're doing like acts of heroism. Maybe they become a great hero on their world, just doing good deeds with their space marine abilities. Then all of a sudden the dark angels show up and just try to kill you. Like nothing you do will be good enough to redeem yourself in their eyes.
Yeah. Yeah, like how yeah, like how many of those dark angels really knew what was happening uh at the betrayal of Caliban? Like were they really talking to Luther and he's like, "Oh yeah, we know chaos is here. We're going to rebel." Like or did they kind of just have this newly recruit, he's only been in Astartes for 3 months now. and then he gets lumped in with all this. Like there's all sorts that would have been in those tiers. There would have been also a bunch that were traveling with the lion himself, and then were kicked back to the planet when the first kind of betrayal happened. So you can have all types of all flavors of fallen.
Any fallen taken alive are brought to the shadow depths of the rock, where interrogator chaplains await. Here, amidst cold stone and flickering lumens, excruciating rituals of repentance are enacted. Some fallen, broken by the torment, confess their sins and receive the bitter mercy of the swift death. Most, however, refuse, enduring prolonged agony until death claims them. Whether defiant to the last or resolute in their warped convictions, these tragic figures leave behind curses or silence, their souls cast in the eternal maelstrom of the warp. Yeah. There's a unique book that is somewhat outdated now, where one of the fallen claims that the lion was the traitor and that the fallen were actually the loyalists. But that's always left in a state of like, is he lying because he's a fallen? So can you take his word at face value? There was a question of, was he mistaken? And like you said, Luther tricked him into thinking they were the good guys, even though they weren't, right? Because of course you would think you were good. What if someone told you the lion was actually the traitor? Is it really your fault that you attacked them? So yeah, there's lots, and it goes back to that like flip-flopping duality. Back when we didn't know what was true, any of these things could have been true, which makes those layers of secrecy make more sense. But now that it's all kind of resolved, it starts to kind of weaken that aspect of them.
Yeah. Like in universe, it's still fine, but yeah, for like meta universe and for us looking at it, yeah, it kind of hampers it.
Yeah, for sure. The Dark Angels' hunt is unending, their purpose twofold yet indivisible. To the Imperium, they are stoic guardians, paragons of duty, but beneath the veil of brotherhood lies a darker truth, an eternal penance of ancient sins, carried out with ruthless precision by the Sons of the Lion. Their secrets are their strength and their curse, a legacy both glorious and damning, echoing through the millennia in shadowed whispers.
Yeah, cool.
Dun dun dun.
We talked on the last episode about there being a box set for them, and it was, you can really just paint your Dark Angels as fallen. But they do have one unique model called Cypher, which he deserves his own episode, but we'll get to him eventually. But
All right, should we get into the Watchers in the Dark? The Watchers in the Dark are beings of diminutive nature, cloaked in a shadow and mystery, who hail from the now lost world of Caliban. These peculiar entities have become inseparably tied to the Dark Angels and their unforgiving successor chapters, dwelling within the labyrinthine depths of the rock, the formidable mobile fortress monastery of the First Legion. Though their true nature remains shrouded in obscurity, they serve as silent, hooded attendants to the chapter's most exalted warriors, bearing ancient relics into battle or forming solemn processions during the chapter's sacred rites. Possessing an extraordinary, inscrutable psychic talent, the Watchers shield themselves from harm and influence with an ease that borders on the supernatural. While they never engage in combat directly, their spectral presence on the battlefield speaks to a power that transcends the physical. The highest ranking Dark Angels accept their presence with an unspoken reverence, yet the Watchers remain elusive, never uttering a word, and cloaked perpetually in their monastic robes. To gaze upon them is to witness living manifestations of the chapter's unyielding guilt and its ceaseless pursuit of redemption. The Watchers move freely through the rock, venturing into forbidden, forgotten places that even the Dark Angels dare not tread. From the earliest days of their initiation, every recruit is warned to neither obstruct nor question the Watchers, lest they risk vanishing into obscurity like those whispered of the cautionary tales. These spectral figures haunt the dust laden corridors and arcane chambers of the rock's librarius, their silent purpose a mystery to all but themselves. In their presence, the air is thick with the weight of the unknown, their very existence a potent symbol of the chapter's hidden truth and ancient burdens.
yeah, very cool.
There you have it. There is sort of like a few interesting. I know there's like the was a Nephilim vehicle or something. And then there's also like the Watchers. This is all very like ancient Jewish text, like Book of Enoch, fallen angels. I just wanted to give a little nod to that before we got into the rest of the episode. But
Deep Hebrew
yeah.
mythology.
A lot of that deep lore as well is being referenced here.
I like the Watchers kind of being that forest sprite comparison. You know, they were around on Caliban in the forest, watching the lion, helping him out. I kind of like that forest sprite concept for these guys.
I like not knowing because some mysteries should be left alone.
Well, you son of a bitch. You're right. I changed my answer.
You can have a preferred theory.
Well, yeah, like okay, I think we're ready for call-ins. But before we do that, I'm just gonna ramble over a couple things we missed on this episode that I would have loved to get to, but honestly, man, like it's tough condensing all this information into a 2.5-hour episode. So things we kind of missed. 10,000 years of history. So that's just a little detail that I glossed over there. Just minute. But the big thing about that is the Air Indomitus and the return of the lion. So just know that will probably get an episode, you know, at the end of the Primarch series. We'll come back in and see where everyone's at, all the chapters and stuff. Other things we missed name characters. Like we didn't really name anyone. We named Belial, we named Azrael, but like we don't know much about them. So, you know, there's definitely a Dark Angels character episode that could happen, and you could get a full episode out of that. They have a lot of cool characters. I was reading about there was 2 dreadnoughts, and they were from the ancient times, but they got some fate befell upon them. So I'm not going to ruin it. And the other huge character is Cypher. I don't want to.
The chat's blown up.
Spoilers.
Where is Cypher?
Yeah. And Cypher's, he's a huge character too that, you know, we could talk about a lot, and like there's so much mystery around him, but I just am like, man, he's not necessarily crucial to what we need to know about the Dark Angels right now. There's loads of relic and war gear talk we could have gone on. Like we mentioned a whole bunch that these guys had an arsenal from the dark age of technology. So just know that maybe you just go read a book about this. Also librarians and their unique powers. I forget what it was called off the top of my head, but they have like a whole branch of psychic librarian powers. Death Watch service, they have a very unique role in the Death Watch because of their aloofness and also their task, and also how they use the Death Watch as further branches of information, essentially, where now they can have just that much more of their web spread out. We didn't even really mention their chapter fleet, including the Rock. Like the Rock is a whole situation in and of itself, one of the most powerful kind of orbital bastions in the Imperium, you know, right up next to the Phalanx or some of these other massive spaceports. So we missed so much in this episode, so don't at me. I know. There'll be an episode soon, TM. We'll get there when we get there.
I like that. I like at least that you acknowledged that, Mark, and that yeah, we're not going to get spammed with like, you didn't mention my favorite character again.
Yeah, I just don't know how to condense it much more. Like, fuck, man, I've spent 12 hours talking about Dark Angels, and I feel like I just scratched the surface.
But that's a good thing. That means more episodes is what that means.
Yeah.
So you don't want us to just glaze over everything and, oh, great, we mentioned your character for 30 seconds. You want the depth, the discussion. Who are they? What do they really want?
Yeah. No, and that's exactly it. Like, you know, a lot of those topics, they deserve their own fucking episode where we can really dive into it. So
who is the Warhammer 40K? That's the question we all want to know.
Been dying to know. Since 2019, I've been dying to know. I think we're ready for call-ins, and yeah, we will call in Jax this time. Let's see if he behaves himself unlike the last time. Hey, Jax, welcome to the stage. Get him!
Anyway, Dark Angels.
Yeah, what do you feel like we missed? Let's get that off the table right off the bat. What didn't we talk about that you wished we talked about? Is there anything?
Honestly, I'd really hope you guys go more in depth about Cypher. He's a really cool character. I just read his book, and of course, this is a Dark Angels episode, but Lion's return to 40K would be a little cool with the how he's interacted with the Fallen. But that could be his whole like 3 hour episode on its own.
Yeah, it really could be. Soon, TM.
If you don't mind little spoilers, but he doesn't interact with his like original chapter, like the not the original, but the Dark Angels of today. He interacts with Fallen instead, which is a pretty cool like thing. And instead of Fallen, they're risen, but not all Fallen are risen. Some are still fallen, so you gotta
There's a reason why he carries around a big sword.
so it could fell
Yeah.
some fallen.
It's like standing and sitting in church. Are you a big Dark Angels Fallen? I was gonna call you
Yeah.
Fallen Jax.
Honestly, you guys have convinced me to start Dark Angels army, and I was actually gonna pick up.
We can't afford to keep doing
Yeah, I
this.
know it's like my wall can't sustain it, but you gotta just keep going.
You just gotta keep your head down and keep going.
But what are you planning on then? What are you getting?
Definitely getting the lion at some point. I just got Gilliman, so I'd have to do like a, gotta collect all the Primarchs. You collect one, you gotta collect all the others. It's just how it goes.
It's like Pokemon, yeah.
Yeah, Primarchs are more important, but yeah, the Dark Angels are really cool. Definitely have to kit bash some of their winged helmets.
Yeah, that's definitely something that they're not as prominent in the new models. There is one captain, I believe, that has the winged helmet still, but some of the older ones with like the very prominent wings are really cool. They're very Teutonic. I really like them.
Yeah, especially like the hoods and stuff, and all like the robes and stuff. It's like, oh, it's just,
Yeah, 100%. That was one of the big things too that the Primaris were missing when they released the Primaris was like you had one or two guys that had robes. So like if you were a Dark Angels player, you kind of got screwed. But they've just now started to release some of the more archaic looking models, which is really I'm glad that they went back to doing that because I was worried there for a second they weren't going to.
Space Marine 2 just came out with an update for the Dark Angels, and they got some pretty slick looking models on, or not models, but
All game models. Yeah.
Animations, game models or whatever on there. So
Shirts and skins.
Skins, that's the word. I don't like to say that, but yes, Jordan, skins.
yeah. I really wish they'd do more to like diversify. Like imagine like you get your box of intercessors instead of just getting like the basic helmet, you get Dark Angel helmets. You get a little icon for like salamanders or ultramarines for your sergeant. You get like a little this instead of having to pay like $50 for like a small little packet of transfers.
Sir, that is the point. That is why they don't sell them efficiently.
Well, you gotta show your fans a little love,
Not
you
from
know?
GW.
The company that shall not be
Yeah, I
named.
just named them.
Don't worry. When me and Christian
No.
are in charge, things are going to change. Don't you worry.
We'll release an exclusive Fallen Jax box with all the different chapter bits in it.
First thing when you guys are in power.
Mm-hmm.
We're just gonna make all the false promises.
First thing when you guys are in power.
Yeah, we're just like politicians now.
I do plan to abuse the power that we have.
First thing when you guys are in power, kill all Primaris.
Oh, retcon. I thought you guys were okay with retcons.
It was all a
Fucking
dream.
nerds. And the lion wakes up and it was all a dream, this Primaris fever he had. They aren't real. They can't hurt you. I guess final question for you. Do you have any thoughts on the Watchers in the Dark? Do you have like a preferred theory on what they could be? Are they warp creatures? Are they some type of machination of something bigger, more grand? What are your thoughts on the Watchers?
In the last episode I was on for a call-in that lasted longer than 4 seconds. Yeah, definitely I kind of delved into Watchers in the Dark. They're just the cutest Eldritch horrors ever. I really think they're just flat out like humanoid Xenos, but they're connected to the warp a little bit. Like the Nazguls from Lord of the Rings. Like they're bound to the Dark Angels some way. Cause like these miniature little like probably like this tall little short stacks of black robe creatures. You guys described in one of your Lesser Xenos episodes that you can't attack them. Like you go towards like charge at one, you divert away from it. You don't attack these flat out. And like for whatever reason, we don't know. But I think they're bound to Dark Angels. Like that's why you'll see like pictures of them like hold up like little books for the Dark Angels and stuff, or like clean their sword. I do believe they're like warp Xenos, as I said, but like I believe, as I said, like they have some sort of malevolent tie to the Dark Angels, whether that's purely for the good of the Imperium or that's for their own reasons. Like we just don't know, and it's really cool to think about that.
Yeah, I wonder if the lion, when he was in the forest, like you said, kind of bound them to him in some way. Maybe he found like their home and their altar stone or whatever, and made some type of sacrifice there. Or maybe every creature that he slayed, he gave to the Watchers in the Dark. Or who knows what kind of pact he could have made with them.
So badass. If you guys don't mind, I have like a
Um,
little excerpt from the Lion Son of the Forest, if you don't mind.
Lay it on us.
Basically, to summarize it though, so the lion comes back, right? He's in this little mystical warp place, and you have this little Watcher in the Dark, like aiding him and like guiding him. The lion is there, and he's like he sees this guy in a boat, no spoilers, but he tries to swim out to him. And all of a sudden these like weird like green, purple, red, and blue, these shadows in the water, they dart towards him, and a Watcher in the Dark, I don't want to say like pulls him out, but like gets him out of there. And it's like it's heavily implied like you know what these shadows are. These little munchkins, Nazgul things, these motherfuckers, they don't mess around. They mess with warp gods on a daily basis. And it's like, it wasn't like scared of them or anything. It was just like, oh, buddy, don't go in there unless you want to die.
Hmm.
And it's like
Very neat.
this mystery and awe of like, this little like fucker is so powerful. He like tells a Primarch outright that don't go near these warp gods. They will kill you.
Hmm. Yeah, very cool. Very interesting.
yeah, like they're much more powerful than their little robes kind of give off the impression of. Do you think that they have like a physical form, or if they took off their hood and like you mentioned ring wraiths, like they're just like there's nothing there. They're more warp entity and they just kind of disappear.
Well, I like to think since you can't fight them directly, like as said previously, like a Corn Berserker will like charge a Dark Angel, and they'll see this like a little munchkin, and they'll like charge towards them, axe in hand, and they'll just like be diverted somehow. I like to think that they're like miniature, like in the warp, how like you got the chaos gods, and then you have other beings that aren't of chaos. I like to think these little like munchkins are, or Watchers in the Dark, they are chaos related, but they're not affiliated. Like somehow the Dark
Yeah.
Angels were able to contain this little thing of warp, and it became a Watcher in the Dark. And they're like, oh, these things are helping us. Let's create more of them.
Yeah, that's interesting too. Is that could the Dark Angels be actually crafting them? That could be another one of their dark secrets. Is like they're actually using the warp to create entities, which would be quite heretical by any other standard.
Do they come with the robes, or are the Dark Angels also crafting them for them? These are the questions.
We need to know. One cool little thing on the Dark Angels and their close association with these entities is like in mythology, the creatures like the Furies would often like hound and like go after people who were guilty of something. And so like in a way there could be an association there too, where maybe it's not the Dark Angels, not that they want these things to be around them, but it's kind of a curse that they're always there as a constant reminder of betrayal or whatever else.
Well, any other thoughts
That's
there, real
interesting.
quick, Jax, or jump to the next person?
Yeah, I like the Greek, like the Furies thing, but like maybe take it a step up, like even though like you can't hurt them, they could still hurt you. And it's like they're working towards an end goal that's aligns with the Dark Angels. They're there to remind them of how they failed. And so if they could like keep reminding them, they'll eventually stop doing what they're doing. And like say like a dark Eldar like is getting in their way or something. Like 50 years from now, this Dark Eldar is going to mess with the Dark Angel's plan of redemption. And these like three little like watches in dark show up, says you messed up, eats its soul, runs away, and is like carrying around a little book the next day for a Dark Angel.
Ah, perfect. Just like yeah, oh, I forget the term for it, but yeah, kind of a end game stratagem that happens. Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks for calling in. I think we'll jump to the next person there.
These guys, have a good one.
Up next, we got Fuzz. Let's give him a minute. He looks ready, locked, and ready to go. Fuzz, what's good, my man?
Good. How's it going, homies?
Muy bien.
Awesome. That was a great episode. Awesome to just keep learning even more about the Dark Angels and
Good.
how they go into like going into 40K and like the adjustments and everything.
Was there any part that you wish got carried over more? Like, do you wish the hexagrammaton got carried through a little bit more, or are you happy with how they did it?
I think the hexagrammaton, if they had carried over all of them, would have carried over nicely into the chapters like Battle Company format. But obviously there weren't enough of them to like fill out all 10 slots. So I think it's just kind of like okay that they kept just the two. Like I said, like when just in some side reading I was doing that. God damn it, I can't remember the name of it anymore. But there is the other one, like the Consecrators or something like that. Their heraldry is similar to like the Firewing heraldry, so maybe they're a chapter that was broken off from another one of the wings.
Yeah, I love that concept
Yeah.
of them just breaking off into other chapters, and like the Dark Angels are the leaders, so they get the best two, the ones that are most pertinent to nowadays, and other chapters kind of get the other wings a bit. Even just like
Yeah, like they almost like narrowed their focus a little
yeah,
bit.
exactly. They went from being the masters of everything to just these couple things really well, and then they gave some other chapters some goodies.
Yeah, I also thought it was interesting. Like I just as a chapter, like you see the legions, and then like going down, into the chapters, like each one kind of has its own like shtick and its purpose. But usually it's like its purpose in the defense of the Imperium, and like these like this chapter likes to attack in this way, or this chapter likes to fight Xenos or fight chaos or whatever, where it's like their deal is more is the like our thing is going after the fallen, sometimes almost first and foremost. And even with some of their like successor chapters, to the detriment of what they're doing, like they'll break off from whatever mission they're on to go after the fallen.
Yeah. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
And I was thinking about this during the 30th episode. Sorry, I'm gonna talk and walk because my laptop just gave a low battery signal. But we always hear about
Walking into the kitchen,
I walk actually out of the kitchen to the.
making himself some food.
I just finished some chips. But how they have such interesting like war gear, and like compared to a lot of the other chapters, and like how much that is like left over from the previous ages, and like from just what they had during like the unification wars and stuff. And like did any of that was that any of that like looted from some of the other like war bands and from some of the techno barbarians? Just like who knows, like you said, who knows what they have. They could have Dark Age of Tech relics that weren't from the Emperor, that weren't from the Imperium, that were from who knows who made them. I just find that just again super interesting. Like just so
Yeah.
many things that you can do with them with like homebrew lore and stuff.
Like especially when you're doing your own chapters, you could come up with like, oh yeah, they got this super unique one-off death machine or whatever. This one of kind exterminatus device,
Right.
or whatever, that they're now entrusted to guard, because if it falls in the hands of anyone else, then it's no good for anyone. So yeah.
Yeah, just everything about them just seems to be so just
Yeah, my next question for you, I guess, would be, oh no, sorry, I got leg, carry on. My leg's not good.
I'm sorry. If you got to go on with the question, help me focus.
So my next question for you then would be, how do you feel about the induction of Primaris Marines into the chapter, and how could they have maybe done it a little better? Should they even have allowed it? Would this have been maybe like a cool way to have a permanent firstborn army?
So I think a permanent firstborn army wouldn't have been bad. However, like it seems like the idea of like why they shouldn't allow Primaris in is because they, you know, don't know the secrets of the Dark Angels. Um, and I guess my like counter thought to that is if the Dark Angels are still recruiting from all these different worlds, they're still constantly bringing an influx of new Astartes that don't have that history with the chapter the same as the Primaris would. Um, so I guess from that aspect, like it really doesn't bother me because they're still already bringing in new people and indoctrinating them into the Dark Angels way of life. So why not indoctrinate these new Primaris into their way of life as well?
You would have to kind of keep them at that arm's length. Well, that would be the only way it would make sense. But that being said, there is a difference between inducting your own recruit that you can manipulate their mind from the ground up versus an already existing, better than you even Primaris Marine who wears your colors and acts like he's you, but he's not you, right? Like he's going to walk in with the same entitlement of like, I'm a Primaris Marine captain, let's say. He's not going to go with all the other captains who are talking about the big secrets, right? Especially with that tiered system of secrets that the Dark Angels create. That's kind of my issue with it. But you're right. Like if they all come in as like and are treated as outsiders for a while until they, earn their own loyalty. But then again, can you really trust? They're not yours. You didn't create them. Could their loyalties lie with Belisarius' call? Can you really trust that Terra? They came from Terra. Do we trust Terra that much with our darkest secrets? That's the whole person we're trying to avoid revealing this to.
Yeah, I 100% agree with like the arm length thing.
So it's doable, but they never really elaborated. That's me making that up, right? Like that's the only way it makes sense to me, but they didn't do that. Yeah.
Sure. Okay, yeah. See, and I would agree with you that yeah, like I said, bring them in, try to induct them into the Dark Angels way of life and all of that, and yeah, basically just like test them, vet them, make sure that you can trust them. And like I said, maybe they just never do. Are like the new inner circle models? Are they Primaris models?
They're scaled to be Primaris models, and I assume their stat lines are the same. So
Okay.
yeah, but and this is where it gets weird, right? Because you have like the concept of the Risen, but they're all going to be represented as Primaris
Mhm.
models because that's all you're going to get now. There's no, like they're not planning on keeping old school Marines around. That's never been the goal. So at some point, you just kind of hand wave away the scaling and the thing, and they're all going to be Primaris. Just assume, and that's why all the characters are obviously crossing over, right? They're just assuming everyone we want to keep is just going to be Primaris or Primaris scaled. We're not going to worry too much about who is and who isn't, and keep those ones around, right?
Yeah, and that's where you get into like when you have any game that has a long history of deep lore, but also has game mechanics that they're trying to work with, like trying to strike that balance is people are never going to be happy with it.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I plan to take like those new models and convert them into Primaris Marines anyways.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'd be a little bit annoyed if all my robed guys are now like an inch shorter than all the new stuff that I want to kit bash with, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a practical element to all this.
Yeah, but like from a headcanon standpoint, though, I definitely agree that like whatever they do put out, it should be with a lot of mistrust around the Primaris Marines coming in, and yeah, like just absolutely putting them through the ringer to make sure that they can be trusted with even like the most basic of Dark Angel secrets.
Yeah, last time
Yeah.
they trusted
Yeah,
somebody to
100%.
raise recruits for them, they lost their whole fucking planet. So
Yeah, that that was a big old
yeah,
oopsie.
so I'm sure they're not very trusting. Do you have any of the closing thoughts there, Fuzz? Or
I like I had put in the chat, just like I think the Watchers of the Dark are super interesting. My sort of headcanon for them is, and I again like kind of like you, Mark. I've not really read any of the books, more of like a reading, just like the world building information and stuff. So I could already be wrong, but that like the Watchers of the Dark were the original inhabitants of Caliban. Like they were the original species on there that ruled the planet, and they basically flew too close to the sun or flew too close to the warp, as it were, and sort of like a nuclear holocaust, but like a warp apocalypse kind of thing on their planet. That happened so
Oh.
long ago that the planet's been able to recover from it. And the surviving Watchers in the Dark, because they were such a like warp um, knowledgeable species and had a mastery of it, have basically like kind of made a pact among themselves that they are going to be more like stewards of the planet, because they understand that they can't they have lost the right to be in charge of Caliban, and so like the humans come in and settle it and make their world, and they just try to like keep everything stable, because I know it's from what I've read, Caliban has like, I don't know about higher than average, but like there's a lot of like warp tainted beasts and a lot of just like random warp shenanigans that are just part of the planet, and sometimes it seems like they try to keep those in line and keep those in check. um and so like maybe
Yeah.
that's one of the secrets that they had with Lionel Johnson, is like as these stewards of the planet. And that's why, because if I remember right, the Rock is part of like the destroyed Caliban, so like they still reside on that planet, and they still are holding to maybe some oath to Johnson of like, kind of working together to like protect Caliban and fight chaos, something like that.
Yeah, I really like that concept of like it doesn't necessarily have to be ancient Xenos, it could be ancient humans, but just
Mm-hmm.
ancient beings that created some type of like warp bomb that affected not only themselves but also all the wildlife on the planet, and now they themselves are kind of living their own redemption arc that carries on through
Right.
to the Dark Angels.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, cool concept.
Yeah, the other thing that reminded me of like, just because they kind of like go through the
Yeah.
ship and nobody really knows what they do, is anybody, like any of y'all already know that's listening, that's ever played Mass Effect, and there's these creatures that live on the Citadel, which is basically a giant space station, that nobody has any idea what they do. They've just always been there, and they go about their business like maintaining the ship, maintaining the station, and doing things like that, until like bad guys show up and it's kind of revealed what they are. So it just kind of gives me a little bit of like those vibes. Like also there is a potential for them to like turn into something else at like the drop of a hat.
Yeah, like their robes are hiding
Hmm.
something,
Yeah.
a more powerful form. Yeah.
Exactly.
I do really like that it really incorporates a
Neat.
lot of the other aspects that we know about them. Their close ties to the planet, their close ties, this weird taint that happens to be around the creatures of Caliban generally. Like it ties it all up quite nicely. So Watchers are old ones confirmed.
Exactly. There we go.
Confirmed.
Yeah.
Yeah, you heard it here first from the new leaders of GW lore writers. So maybe if we just say it, it'll make it happen. That's my hope.
As a demon.
If we put it out into the warp
Yeah.
enough, it'll wander over to
Yeah.
Games Workshop, right?
That's the goal. Very cool. Well, thanks, Fuzz, for calling in. I think we got one more call in real quick, and then
Cool.
yeah.
Thank you guys.
All right, come to the stage, Purge. Yo, welcome. What upsetting things do you have to say to me today?
They're gonna make you in charge of 40K lore, and your first project will be making a Space Marine chapter.
Yeah, okay, I'll make it big.
Yeah. No, you're gonna be put only on.
That's the deal with the devil. They'll be like, yeah, you can be one of our writers, but this is the project we have for you to write
Yeah.
about.
And it's the only thing you're touching.
Look, Mark, we know you know the lore intricately. How? Tell us how we can make female Space Marines happen. You're the only one who can do it, Mark. We believe in you.
You're our only hope.
Yikes. There was a murder rampage in GW that day.
And Conrad didn't do anything wrong.
Naturally. Okay. So this is what you have to contribute.
Well, I like the interrogator chaplains actually, and then you guys were talking about how they would incorporate Primaris Marines into the chapter, especially when it comes to the more inner aspects of it. And the thing is, any military organization, their whole goal is to beat you down to rebuild you back up. And with those interrogating chaplains on top of it, they'd be a lot more efficient at beating people down and building them up. So I don't think it would be that far fetched for them to actually get Primaris and condition them to the way they want and start bringing them into that inner circle.
Man, that's a good point. And then you throw on the next level of like them having their own librarians with unique mind bending abilities. So it's like, yeah, they just get the death or the new Primaris Marine, mind wipe them, start from scratch. The interrogator chaplain rebuilds them up in the history of the approved history of the chapter and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so like I said, I don't see it that far fetched. I know a lot of people don't like Primaris because of the way they're introduced, but there's lore that you can work with to make it work.
So one thing though, Purge, and I do agree with you that that would make the most sense too for Dark Angels as well. But typically when you join the military, you want to be there versus like, you know, if I don't know what country you're from or what army you might have served with, but like if a random other country adopted you all of a sudden, would you be as willing to let them break you down and build you up again? Right? If you see them as a foreign force rather than like on your side or on your team, then it kind of changes it a little bit. That's a different, right? Like with scouts, they're breaking you down. Like your old life doesn't matter. Who you used to be doesn't matter. You're now going to be part of the Dark Angels, and that's their way of building you up into their image. But when you have an already pre-existing army with its own command structure, all of a sudden showing up, you know, with their own rules and what their idea of what a Dark Angel is, which isn't obviously yours, if you're like an old school Calvinite or like, you know.
It depends on how Primaris are conditioned in the first place when they're sent to a chapter. Like, are they being sent to chapters and like your Primaris heritage is more important than this chapter's heritage? Or we just made you this Primaris, now you have to go into this military and be part of their heritage. Like, there's certain people.
Right. You're kind of a blank slate.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, there's people that went into the whole war that we're not supposed to talk about, and they were willing to do that, and I'm sure they had to go through some kind of training, regardless of what kind of military
Right. But so
background they
again, that's the
had.
difference though between willingly going or being conscripted, right? Like there's a huge difference in the mindset of what that would produce. But you're right. I agree. Like if anyone's going to be able to break someone down and remold them, it would be the Dark Angels and their interrogation tactics for sure.
Yeah, and that's where I could see them being part of that inner command structure because, like I said, now if you took the interrogator chaplains out of it and the librarians out of it, then it's a completely different story altogether because they don't have the assets needed to build these people up the way they want to. It'd just be like any other chapter. But then at that point, if it's any other chapter, it's not like you're trying to hide these gravest streakers from everybody either.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's fair.
At least that's my headcanon for it.
Fair enough. Sure. It works, man. I'm glad that you're not going to be kept up at night thinking about how the fuck did they do it like we are.
No, I'm kept up at night wondering how we're gonna make Marcus love Primaris Marines. And I think every episode I get one step closer to it.
It's your hunt for the fallen. This is your quest, your
yes.
redemption arc.
That one and getting everybody to
Yeah.
join the Conrad Cruise fan club.
The cruise train? Yeah.
Yep.
Well, any other thoughts you want to share about the Dark Angels and anything that we've kind of discussed today?
I posted them before, but they had some interesting air vehicles that I also noticed. And I know we talked about the
And he's gone. Well, I guess things sometimes just naturally conclude themselves by themselves. It's nice when everything gets wrapped up in a neat little bow. Yo, sorry,
You
Purge.
kicked
I don't know what
yourself.
happened to you. For once, I didn't kick somebody. That was all you. But
He exterminated himself.
yeah. Oh man, rip. But hey, that's that. We're running long, so let's get to the end notes, I guess. Man, what a wild 4 episodes that was. I hope everyone enjoyed the way that I decide to present these massive topics of, Primarchs and Legions. Let me know what you think, because I can kind of tweak it before I approach the next one. Because yeah, we got a whole fucking schwack of these to do. So let me know what you liked, didn't like, what would you like to see more of? Yeah. End notes. Yo, go listen to Lorehammer Listener Lore podcast. It's a show. I do it. It's fun. I read homebrew lore. It's a lot of fun. Each homebrew lore I read is one step
And then
closer
take the
to
job of a
completing all
lore
the lore.
master.
I want to be the first one to read them more.
Mark will even make your lore canon.
That's my goal. Yes, yeah. Yeah, because I am now the new creative director at GW. Co-creator directive. Sorry, Christian. I don't ever mean to cut you out, but you are slightly lower position than I am.
Right. Yeah, and if you like me and my work and Jordan's work, we also, and you like Star Wars, we have the Star Lores podcast. So come check us out over there, where we discuss all things Star Wars.
The best Star Wars podcast on the HoloNet. Isn't
and
that
the
right?
Yeah.
I can concur. Yo, do you guys have a favorite episode? Like when somebody asks, like, do you send one specific episode as your like kind of go-to?
I think it just it depends on what you like in Star Wars, right? Like, do you like Mandalorians? We got a Mandalorian episode. Do you like the Empire? We got Stormtrooper episode. We got Rebels. We touch everything in the galaxy, and there's a lot to touch. So
I think the most I've heard back from is our Darth Maul episode, but that's just
with your grubby fingers.
Weirdly enough, which I don't even remember that episode. I'd have to go back and listen to it.
He's like a fan favorite. People were begging us for Darth Maul, but whatever. We'll give the people what they want.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's nice of you. I never do that for my people.
You just like to edge them. You like to bait them with stuff. Keep them wondering when you're going to finally give them what they want.
No, you have to keep them disciplined. You can't just you got to give them their meat and potatoes, not just
candy.
Candy. So
I'm trying to raise healthy lore children here.
Cool. A well-balanced lore diet. Okay, well, Star Lore's podcast. Go check that out. Apparently, they don't have one episode to recommend, so listen to them all.
Yeah, there you go.
Yo, Patreon. Honestly, I've been blown away with the amount of people joining our Patreon. It's so cool. I'm so inspired and encouraged to keep writing and producing content for you guys. It's been very nice to see the growth. We're nowhere near where we were before the hiatus on Patreon. Number-wise, on listeners and downloads, we're probably getting pretty close. Maybe, hard to say. I don't really look too much at numbers, but the Patreon, it can still grow by a lot. I know there's a lot of you who haven't donated yet, so consider it. But those who did join in the last couple days were Cube 404, TJ Brady, William, and Rupert. And a couple of those guys were some big $25 a month donors, and super encouraging just to see the Patreon just continue to grow. And I know there's room for more.
The Imperial Tithe,
thanks guys,
invites more people to join always. There's never enough in the Imperial Tithe. Mm-hmm. We need bodies for the Imperium.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And we got to make more on Patreon here than my new job as creative director is going to pay me, because I don't think I can do both just contractually. So make sure you join the Patreon so I continue doing Lorehammer instead of leading GW in a glorious new age of non-Primaris lore. All right.
Especially if you're splitting the salary 3 ways.
Yeah,
right?
Well, fucking 6 ways. I got so many co-hosts. You get $1 and you get $1 and whatever. All right, everyone. Well, thanks for listening, and we'll see you all on the next episode. I think we're doing a High Lords of Terra episode, and then a couple Xenos topics before we jump into the next Legion, which will be Emperor's Children. But Merry Christmas and Happy New Year's to you boys and everyone else listening.
You're just gonna skip over the second Legion like that? Not even gonna do a whole 4-part series on them?
My mind has been wiped of what they were, who they are, what they did.
You should just release.
Yeah, no, I think the second.
Just release redacted episodes. Just an hour of silence.
Oh, I might have to, Christian. That's horrendous.
And props to anyone that actually
Gets me downloads.
Yeah, exactly. If you
Yeah.
actually listen to the whole thing, you will earn an achievement of some kind. We'll have to come up with that scheme.
Yeah. Just every 30 minutes, you just get hit by a couple ads and then back to the silence. Awesome. Well, thanks again, everyone. Adios. See you on the next one.
Peace.